Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto the Ultimate is the friendly neighborhood 9 Tails? Part 2. And this FIC now has some cover art. It's just a picture of Kurama's sad gaze with the colors changed to look like Naruto, but I like it all the same. Gamabunta didn't mind a fun spar every now and again. He wasn't having fun though. The giant toad leapt across the beach, dodging great slashes of sand and water. Damn it, Jiraiya, why didn't you tell me he had elemental attacks? Gamabunta yelled in frustration as he cleaved through a slash of water. Complain later. Here he comes. Jiraiya warned from atop the toad's head. Gamabunta didn't need the warning, raising his blade to block Naruto's claws from giving him any new scars. The sheer force of the attack made Gamabunta skid back on the beach. Naruto was grinning, just a little bit. He had missed the rush of truly training, sparring, and fighting. Massive chakra or not, he still felt as though his blood was starting to rush now. Don't get cocky, brat, Jiraiya exclaimed as he went through hand seals. Needle Jizo, needle hell. Naruto let out a roar of pain as needle-like hairs were shot directly into his eye. Gamabunta used the chance to jump back once more. But this time, he used the gap between them to go on the offensive, leaping towards Naruto at full speed and full force, his blade poised to stab into the biju. A single tail blocked his blade. The appendage, despite what it might look like, was unyielding. Gamabunta felt like his sword was locked with another blade rather than the tail of fur. But how could he expect anything less from a biju? Speaking of which, he jumped up just in time to avoid another of Naruto's tails slamming into him from the side. He certainly got better at using those tails, Gamabunta remarked, smirking despite himself, just before he descended. Water style. Liquid bullet. Naruto, now having both his eyes again, eyed the single water jutsu, and batted it away with one of his many tails. What are you up to? Naruto grumbled as he watched Gamabunta land. His eyes went wide as he realized that Jiraiya was no longer on the forehead. Earth style. Dark swamp. Naruto instantly found the sand beneath him turned into a giant pool of mud. The chakra in the jutsu made it nearly impossible to do anything like water walking, causing him to rapidly sink into it. Told you not to get cocky, Naruto, Jiraiya said from Naruto's back. Naruto just looked over his shoulder at him with a blank look. Pervy sage, you're an idiot, Naruto said bluntly. Jiraiya blinked, and that was the only warning he got before he felt a tremendous wave of chakra expelled from Naruto's body. From point-blank range, it hit with all the force of a hurricane. Jiraiya found himself going flying through the air and barely managed to land in a tree instead of being launched away from the beach, giving him a perfect view of Naruto. He was still flaring his chakra, so intensively that it flung away all the mud and left a new crater in the beach. Naruto casually stepped out of the remains of the dark swamp jutsu, before he charged full speed at Gamabunta. This time, when the toad moved to block, Naruto caught the sword with his mouth. Gamabunta was honestly surprised the blade didn't shatter against Naruto's fangs. With his hands free and Gamabunta surprised for a moment, Naruto took the chance to punch the toad, his furred fist embedded in the stomach. Gamabunta gasped in pain, falling onto his back as Naruto tossed the blade into the waves. Seizing the moment, Naruto reeled his other arm back high, preparing to strike with all that he could. Water style. Toad oil bullet. Gamabunta exclaimed, unleashing a stream of toad oil directly into Naruto's face. His opponent now blinded and shocked, Gamabunta managed to dodge out of the way before Naruto's fist made impact. Gamabunta paled severely as he felt the shockwave of the attack and saw the huge column of sand that erupted from Naruto's strike. Naruto growled in his throat, unable to wipe the thick oil away. I can't see or smell you, Gamabunta, but I can damn well hear you, Naruto stated, looking in the toad's general direction as his ears twitched. Are we still sparring or not? Gamabunta was tempted to call it quits. He was barely able to keep the summoning jutsu from coming undone after that last attack. Still, there was one last thing to try. A paper bomb on a kunai exploded after being thrown at Naruto's side, igniting the oil and setting Naruto on fire, just as Jiraiya's body flickered back on top of Gamabunta's head. I'll take that as a yes. Naruto growled out, feeling the flames spreading over his fur, engulfing his body. Wait a minute, this doesn't hurt. He noted in surprise, looking down at his flaming hands and body. Quote. Seriously, you're fireproof? Jiraiya asked, not sure if he was annoyed or just surprised. No, I'm definitely on fire, Naruto said, holding out two of his tails, coated in flames. It just doesn't bother me. I suppose conflagration doesn't mean as much against a body made of chakra, Gamabunta mused as he sheathed his sword. How about we call it quits there? Sure, just let me try to put these out, Naruto said, trying to wipe the flames off. This resulted in a wave of flames washing over the sands near him, charring and scorching the beach. Quote. You know, in hindsight, I would have almost expected that to turn glass, Naruto stated idly as he flung his tails, the flames coming off in an instant. Thanks for the fight, Gamabunta. Just don't expect me to do that too often, Gamabunta said, forcing a grin while rubbing his stomach with a wince. It's crazy to think, just how powerful you are now. Naruto had no comment for that. Watching above from the edge of the pillar, Shikamaru had a look of deep thought and consideration, glancing up at the dust cloud formed by Naruto's punch. This is the power of the Biju, he murmured in thought. I thought him having trouble with the octopus was a bad sign, but it was just a case of the environment and situation working against him. On land at least, I'm not sure much can stop Naruto short of other Biju or an army of giant creatures. He scratched the back of his head, thinking about the situation as objectively as possible. Naruto had the raw power and he was getting creative with how to use it. But Naruto was still Naruto. He wanted to grow and improve, he always had. But he had very little idea of how powerful or skilled the other Biju were, let alone how Naruto would compare to the original Kyuubi. Well, Shika, any bright ideas? He started, finding it almost eerily how Naruto casually looked directly at him from such a far distance away, acting as if they were right next to each other. He supposed having his kind of hearing had that effect. You throw punches more like an old man than a fox, he stated flatly. You try doing taijutsu with these legs. Naruto marked out, glancing down at his hind limbs. Despite having humanoid hands, his body was definitely built for walking on all fours instead of two. If giant toads can figure out how to do it, you can too, Shikamaru countered. Naruto glowered but didn't deny the point. And who is this punk? Gamabunta questioned idly. A Nara, and a friend of Naruto, Jiraiya explained. Nara. It escapes me, are they the ones with the shadow jutsu or expansion jutsu? Gamabunta questioned with a hum, picking up his pipe from the sandy beach. Great. I'll need to clean this out now. Shadows. They also tend to be incredibly intelligent, Jiraiya answered. Another thing, Shikamaru continued. How long have you been able to use the elements with your tails? A couple weeks, Naruto answered with a shrug. Since I can use sand, I've been trying to figure out how to use the others. You should probably focus mostly on mastering one element for now while practicing others, Shikamaru suggested. After you stop sucking at water walking. That part's valid, I accept that, Naruto agreed without shame. Any idea why I can't use regular jutsu yet? Hell if I know, Shikamaru said with a shrug. That's probably not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. The finer, scientific parts about how chakra functions aren't something I randomly studied. But I'll see if I can't look into it when I get back to the village. I'm not trying to sound whiny, but I'm half surprised you didn't try to figure that out already, Naruto mused. It's you, so I thought there was a good chance you'd accidentally stumble into the answer on your own once you had some time and space to yourself, Shikamaru answered causally. If you had, it would have been a waste of effort. Shika, Do remember I can sneeze away the clouds if I want to, Naruto reminded blankly. Naruto, if you could, you'd paint the clouds just to mess with everyone, Shikamaru countered with an eye roll. Now you're just being. Naruto suddenly stopped. Everyone looked at him uneasily. I just gave you an idea, didn't I? Shikamaru said with a pained look of resignation on his face. Maybe. Naruto answered uncertainly. Me and my big mouth, Shikamaru groaned, face palming. Naruto, whatever you're thinking, don't even try it, Jiraiya instructed warily. You don't even know what I'm thinking yet. Naruto protested. I'm not sure we want to, Gamabunta countered bluntly. Naruto rolled his eyes. I was just wondering if you could cast a genjutsu on a cloud. A cloud, Jiraiya repeated, cupping his chin. But you can't do genjutsu. I know that, but Shikamaru said, paint the clouds, and that was where my brain went, Naruto explained. Why would you put a genjutsu on a cloud when you could just make a genjutsu of a cloud? Gamabunta countered. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to change how a real cloud looks than fake an entirely different one? Naruto asked, scratching his face. Why are we having this conversation? Shikamaru questioned in annoyance. Because you all freaked out over me having a random thought. Naruto retorted with a huff. Gamabunta chuckled at the exchange. Well, as thrilling as this has all been, I must be going, Naruto. That fight took a lot out of me. Before you go, can I flick pervy sage off your head? Naruto asked curiously. I feel like I deserve that for the hair needles to the eye thing. Oh, don't act like it was that bad. I doubt it was worse than dust in your eye, Jiraiya said in annoyance. And if I did flick you off, I doubt it wouldn't be a clone, Naruto stated factually. Of course, it would be. I don't know if a flick from you is worse than a flick from Tsunade, and I don't want to find out firsthand. Jiraiya pointed out. Regardless, time's up, Gamabunta said before promptly vanishing, causing Jiraiya to fall through the smoke and into Naruto's palm. I can land on my own, Naruto, Jiraiya said factually. I mean, do you want to be walking in sandals on the scorched sands? Naruto pointed out, looking to where Jiraiya would have landed. Not really, but I've walked on worse, Jiraiya assured, jumping off the palm to a less burnt part patch of sand. You were enjoying that, weren't you? Obviously, Naruto answered, stretching his arms with a small yawn. Cutting loose while training is a lot different from fighting or sparring with someone. I was almost worried I'd have to regrow an arm before the end of this fight, seeing as the Toad Chief took off Shukaku's arm once. About that, Jiraiya said, stoking his chin. You can make your tails hard enough to block Gamabunta's sword. Can't you make all of your fur like that? He asked, motioning to Naruto's torso and abdomen. Not really. I've tried, but, Naruto trailed off, glancing back at his tails. I'm not sure if it's because there's more chakra in the tails or because there's more fluff in them than anything. Given what we know, I'd have to assume it's the chakra. Not all Biju have fluffy tails, Jiraiya pointed out, a bit amused by Naruto's use of the word. Still, Naruto knew that fact well after he met with Saiken. Naruto rolled his neck and yawned. Okay. I'm taking a nap after all of that. Shika, you are clear for cloud watching. Finally, Shikamaru muttered as he left the edge, prepared to find a good spot. Really? And here I thought you'd jump right into training, Jiraiya said, half amused and half observing. I will. After my nap, Naruto answered dismissively, finding a spot to curl up on the beach. The few days passed into a steady rhythm. Naruto awoke and practiced his water walking and dabbled with his elemental abilities. He'd occasionally go out for a swim, bringing back a whale once. Shikamaru and Jiraiya commentated on Naruto's training, but mainly just observed. That changed as the sun began to set on the third day. Jiraiya was settling in for sleep while Shikamaru kept watch, lamenting the lack of good clouds to watch. Without warning or sign, the ground shook thunderously, knocking Shikamaru onto his side as Jiraiya was instantly up. What was that? Jiraiya asked, looking around for any sign of battle. I don't know, earthquake. Shikamaru suggested, still alarmed as he ran to the edge of the pillar, looking down on the beach. Oh no, Jiraiya said in concern and alarm. The last rays of the sun were still peering over the horizon, falling on the beach to reveal a disturbingly vacant beach. Naruto's missing, Shikamaru realized, still feeling the rumbling of the ground, growing fainter and fainter. Naruto's running away, he exclaimed, turning to look north, racing to the other side. There, plain as day, were Naruto's footprints, tearing through the forest and landscape. In the few minutes they took to realize what was going on, he was already no more than a golden dot on the horizon. Not away. Towards. He's heading to the village. Jiraiya realized, biting his thumb. Summoning jutsu. A large green and blue toad appeared with a pair of swords on his back. Jiraiya, why have you summoned me? The toad asked curiously. No time to explain, Gamatsu. Just follow that trail. Jiraiya answered as he and Shikamaru jumped on top, the Chunin kneeling to have a better grip on the summon. Gamatsu glanced at what they meant. That intense chakra, is that? Yes, Jiraiya answered grimly. Gamatsu instantly took off in a series of long, speedy hops. Damn, I didn't realize Naruto was this fast, Shikamaru said, unable to even see the giant, golden beast anymore. What do you think happened? Nothing good, Jiraiya answered with a frown. Naruto can be an idiot, but he's been careful about not scaring the village more than necessary. If he took off like this, then I have to assume. Shikamaru grimaced. The village is under attack. Gamatsu let out a breath. As serious as this is, I was worried I was going to have to fight this new Kyuubi. After what he did to the boss in a spar, I'd rather not take him on in a fight. Jiraiya chose not to dwell on that topic. Damn, I wish he had at least yelled something at us first before taking off. Whatever is going on, probably woke him up. He didn't have time to think, just react, Shikamaru reasoned, trying to think like Naruto. The rest of the journey was in silent contemplation, wondering and preparing for whatever had drawn such a reaction from Naruto. And the worry grew in the back of their minds increasingly, wondering what state the village would be in when they got there. They didn't expect it to be fine. What the hell? He kept on running right past the village. Shikamaru realized in disbelief, seeing how the path continued in a straight line, missing the village by over a mile. Jiraiya, Tsunade exclaimed with a glare as she body flickered onto the toad's head. What the hell is going on? Naruto about gave the entire village a panic attack. Lady Hokage, Shikamaru addressed. We were hoping you knew, Jiraiya answered with a furrowed brow. Naruto just took off all of a sudden. We thought he was running here. He didn't stop. No, he did. For about 2 seconds, Tsunade answered with a scowl. Just long enough to yell out, Tsunade. Send help to follow me. And medics. Then he ran off. There was an uneasy silence. He called you Tsunade. Not old hag, Jiraiya repeated carefully. Tsunade just nodded slowly. Shit, Shikamaru summarized, looking north. Lady Hokage, did you? I already sent a team after him, Tsunade answered bluntly. It took time to get them together. Kakashi, Guy, and Shizune went on ahead. Meanwhile, tracking Naruto wasn't a difficult thing. If anything, it was the opposite. It was hard to miss the trail of massive footprints tearing through the trees of Fire Country. Guy leapt high into the air, scanning the area before descending back to the tree branches, running alongside Kakashi and Shizune. Any sign of him? Kakashi questioned with a frown. Not even a speck on the horizon, Guy answered grimly. The moon is empty tonight. With only the stars for light, it'll be hard to see him from too far away, Shizune said, glancing to the side at the toppled and broken trees that Naruto had left in his wake. What could have gotten this kind of reaction from Naruto? I have a few ideas, Kakashi answered. Nothing good. If Naruto was calling for medics, someone is already hurt. But Naruto was at the southern coast. We're heading to the northern border. Could he have really sensed something that far away without us noticing it as well? Shizune asked, amazed and disturbed by the prospect. Silence reigned as they considered that, until they all came to a halt, leaping to the top of the trees. Naruto's chakra is spiking, Kakashi noted, seeing a small golden flash on the horizon. Quote. He's attacking something. Let's hurry then, before your youthful student claims victory without his sensei to witness. Guy encouraged with a thumbs up to Kakashi. Fluffy student, thank you very much, Kakashi mock corrected. Shizune just sighed at their antics, following after all the same. At their speed, it was only a few minutes before they reached their next stop. Naruto was nowhere to be seen, but by Kami, Shizune whispered in shock as they saw a village, parts of it destroyed and flattened. And there was a heavy scent of blood in the air. Did Naruto? Let's look for survivors, find out what happened, Kakashi said bluntly, glancing at his self-proclaimed rival. Guy, scout around, see if you can find a sign of Naruto or anything else. Shizune silently went along with the plan, not wanting to dwell on that thought either. They entered the village and were unnerved by the quiet. There was no screaming, no crying, nothing. Only the sound of creaking wood, a wooden sign tapping against a wall as it swung in the breeze, and the occasional snapping of debris. Shizune put her hand up to her mouth. Hello, is anyone out there? Silence greeted them. The two ninjas shared a look before separating to quickly investigate the ruins for survivors. But they found none. But where are the bodies? Kakashi wondered as he kneeled down next to a large blood stain. Shizune had similar findings and questions in her own area. This is far too much blood for the average person to walk away from, Shizune deduced. Some rubble moved near her, and she instantly turned, kunai in hand, to see. A little girl with blue hair looked at her with hollowed green eyes. A child, Shizune whispered with a frown, concerned yet suspicious. The little girl put a finger to her lips. Shish. You need to be quiet, she said softly, her tone almost sounding broken. It'll find you. It. What do you mean, it? Shizune asked, lowering her kunai just a bit. The giant monster, the girl answered slowly. Mama said we needed to play a game. We had to be quiet. We had to hide. If the monster lost, it would leave us alone. Mama and Papa didn't win the game though, she whimpered, still obviously in shock at what happened. Shizune felt her heartache for this child, moving to approach her, kneeling in front of her. Don't worry, I'm here to help. What's your name? Do you know where everyone is? Makata. Everyone else is either still hiding, ran far away, or already lost the game, Makata answered hollowly. Shizune felt an uncomfortable knot in her gut forming. She didn't believe Naruto had knowingly or intentionally attacked this village, no, but had he just stepped on it, by chance? Shizune. Over here, Kakashi called out. Shizune grimaced before making a shadow clone. Listen, Makata, my clone is going to watch after you while I go talk to my comrade, okay? Okay, Makata whispered. Try not to lose. Shizune nodded before she dashed away, following Kakashi's voice until she saw the familiar bit of silver hair, standing on a building near the edge of the village. I found a survivor, Shizune said with a frown. A little girl. She says a giant monster attacked the village. And you think Naruto called us all the way up here, just to see him attack a village, for no reason? Kakashi asked neutrally. Of course not. Shizune answered quickly, harshly. I know Naruto would never try to do something like that. But if he did this by accident. This wasn't by accident, Kakashi said, pulling out a flashlight and shining it down below. It was a bit hard to see, the light only illuminating so much, but there was a large patch of ground that looked like it had bowled over, as if something had crashed and skidded along it. This is. Naruto attacked something, whatever was here. He pounced on it and dragged it away. After that, I have to assume Naruto either fought or chased it off, Kakashi speculated, before glancing back, to a spot on the roof. Shizune followed his gaze and saw there was another large spatter of blood, in a roughly human-shaped blotch. What could have done this though? That's the real question. Shizune frowned. I need to check the village for more survivors. Maybe someone saw what attacked them. You should go on with Guy. Speak of the Green Devil, and he appeared, landing next to them. I've found Naruto, he informed instantly. He's far away, but he's not running anymore. Good. We might actually be able to find out what the hell is going on, Kakashi said firmly before he and Guy took off, leaving Shizune to her own duties. Shizune sighed, almost feeling guilty for fearing that Naruto might have been responsible for this destruction. Meanwhile, Kakashi and Guy made their way through the forest at their top speed, or Kakashi's top speed at least. They reached the top of a large hill, coming to the tree tops as Guy pointed out Naruto's golden form in the distance. There he is, Kakashi. Though, I get the sense that Naruto is not waiting for us, he said with squinted eyes to glance at Kakashi. Said man was using one side of a pair of binoculars. You're right, Kakashi agreed as he watched Naruto. He was aglow with chakra, the only reason they could fully see him from a distance at night. His vulpine body was tense, fangs snarling as he looked around, sometimes slowly, other times erratically until something blocked Kakashi's view, just for a moment. He pulled the binoculars back in shock but saw nothing out there to the naked eye. What is that? He said, giving the binoculars to Guy. The taijutsu master grew concerned as he began searching for anything. I don't see anything, Kakashi. What did you see? I'm not sure, Kakashi said as he pulled his headband up and revealed his Sharingan. With it, he scanned and studied for anything around or near Naruto. Shit. What is it? What did you spot? Guy asked. Chakra. A lot of it. I can't sense it, but I can see it. Barely, Kakashi informed. Whatever Naruto is fighting, it's blending in with the darkness. Guy steeled his shoulders. Then perhaps your fluffy student requires some help bringing this unyouthful foe into the light. Kakashi nodded, the roars and growls of Naruto echoing through the night as they sped toward him and whatever he was facing. End of chapter. Start the chapter with a giant spar, end it with a new mystery foe that sends Naruto running across the map to find. Hope you all enjoyed this, as the action has officially started to pick up. Not much else to say, can't give much away. Until next time. Naruto growled as he watched into the darkness of the night. Dujutsu aside, a human wouldn't be able to see anything with the new moon in the sky. But he was a Biju, he could see in the dark just fine. That still didn't change the fact he couldn't see what he was fighting. With a roar, he slashed out and felt something just brushing past his claws. But looking at his hand, he found no evidence of that, to his frustration. Naruto, Kakashi called as he and Guy ran up his back. I heard you coming, sensei, Naruto acknowledged with a head tilt. You both saw that, right? Yes. It looked like a shroud of darkness, plucked from the night itself, Guy answered direly. Naruto, what the hell are you fighting? How did you even know it was here? Kakashi asked, looking around with his Sharingan uncovered. I'll explain the how later. As for what? Naruto trailed off. Kakashi heard the worry in Naruto's voice and grew very, very alarmed as he scanned the area for movement. Talk to me, Naruto. You can't see it either. Naruto asked instead. Barely. It's under a genjutsu, but even without that, it's camouflaged against the night sky, Kakashi answered. Whatever it is, it's trying to get away, Naruto explained with a growl, looking back and forth in its general direction. I managed to drag it away from that village, but it keeps trying to slip out of the fight. But I can smell and hear you, you rattling freak. Did you get a look at it before the sun went down? Guy asked with a frown. Quote. Naruto was unnervingly quiet. Hold on or get off. They both braced themselves as Naruto suddenly leapt to the side, seemingly at nothing. He made no impact, but Kakashi spied where massive footprints kicked up the ground as something dodged away. Naruto. There. On your left. Kakashi yelled out. Without hesitation, he leapt forth in an attempt to grab and bite it. His claws found no purchase, but his fangs did. His jaw snapped shut and he pulled, ripping it away with ease. Too much ease, in fact. But there was no blood, no screech of pain. Just a tearing noise and the rush in the air as something large moved away from him. He grasped his prize and pulled it from his mouth, only to blink at what he found. What is that? Guy asked with a frown. It wasn't fur or scales or anything. It was just blackness, like an enormous cloak of dark fabric. Only, he knew what his nose and eyes were telling him. This wasn't cloth. It was chakra. Quote. Shit, Naruto muttered as it started to dissolve in his hand. It's using chakra as a genjutsu, and to cloak itself at the same time. Kakashi realized with a frown. And the size of that? It must be at least the size of Gamabunta. Bit bigger, actually, Naruto answered grimly, ears flickering at attention. Come on, Naruto. We can't help if you don't talk to us, Kakashi encouraged. Kakashi-sensei, I'm going to admit, I'm kind of panicking here, Naruto admitted freely. That did not bode well. Is it another Biju? I've never heard of one that could hide like this, Guy remarked. If it's what I think it is, it's worse than a Biju, Naruto admitted. Quote. Naruto, what the hell could be worse than a Biju? Kakashi asked with a scowl. A zombie Biju. Both ninjas froze and weren't sure how to take that. A zombie Biju. Guy repeated. That sounds. Something large and covered in shadows barreled into Naruto, who screamed in pain as something bit into his back. Naruto. Kakashi screamed as he turned around and saw the shadowy monster. One of Naruto's tails wrapped around the enemy, but it held tight with fangs and claws, and too many of each. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Kakashi yelled as he launched a large fireball at the hidden foe. It made an impact, and the flames began to eat away at the shroud, the fire revealing it to them both. By the sages, Guy muttered as they looked onto a horrific sight. It was a skull. It was large, misshapen, and bare of all flesh. Vaguely canine, and through the hole of its shroud, they could see more of it. Smaller heads, clawed skeletal digits of all sizes, and even just pure bones and ribs stabbing into Naruto's side, where blood was oozing out and immediately dissolving into golden chakra. And in the sockets of its large, main head was a baleful white light that served as an eye. We have to get it off Naruto, now. It's eating his chakra, Kakashi called out. It's what? Oh, that. Naruto growled as two more of his tails joined in to pull off the creature. Seeing Naruto struggling, Guy leapt forth and delivered a powerful kick to the skull. It gave no reaction to his attack, but the bones did crack. His victory was short-lived, however, as the crack instantly healed, almost as if it had never been there at all. Let's try this again, Kakashi said as he performed the hand signs. Fireball jutsu. The attack went forth once more, but this time directly into the eye of the creature. The sounds of 1,000 rattling bones rang in the air, as if to imitate a scream. Off you leech! Naruto yelled in frustration as he reached over, grasped it by the jaw, and ripped it out of his side. His anger dulled the pain as his tails kept it firmly in his grip. The long tails wrapped tighter and tighter around the shrouded monster, struggling more and more to get out as the blackness covered it once more until it was gone. How the hell? Naruto roared as his tails suddenly were empty. It's gone. Did it slip out, somehow? Guy asked in confusion, scanning the area for any sign of another attack. No, Naruto's right. It vanished. It's gone, Kakashi said with a frown. Was it a summon? I doubt it, Naruto said with a wince. Naruto, are you alright? Kakashi asked in concern, glancing back at the injured side of the fox. Yeah, just cover your eye, Naruto suggested. Kakashi barely did so in time before Naruto flared his chakra, his wounds gone in an instant. There, good as new. Okay, so, zombie Biju, Kakashi repeated. Naruto grumbled. Look, I get it, but please understand that I'm dead serious and I am freaking out a bit here. Kakashi studied Naruto and realized he was being genuine. Something about this had unnerved him, and somehow it was more than just the fact a giant skeleton monster had bitten him. We understand, Naruto, just talk to us. What happened? Later. We need to go check on that village and Shizune. She's great, but if that thing showed up, nothing short of Katsuyu is going to help her, Naruto reasoned. He's right, Guy agreed. Naruto, do you believe you would know if that creature attacked again? I couldn't miss that rattling noise if I tried, Naruto answered, looking off to the east briefly. Good. The reinforcements might run into it, Kakashi said grimly as Naruto began heading back to the village that had been attacked. Naruto could see and hear the people, now out of hiding and trying to help find the wounded. It was more morbid than fortunate, how few wounded there were. Most had died. That said, they all started to panic a bit when Naruto made his approach. Don't worry, the other thing is gone for now, Naruto called out casually. To his relief, that worked to some extent. That thing can talk. Don't worry, he attacked, whatever that monster was. I heard the Leaf Ninjas had a new Kyuubi as an ally, but I didn't really believe it. Are we sure we can trust this? Should we feed him the dead as thanks? No, thank you, I'm not eating the corpses, Naruto deadpanned. Senseis, can you go down and clear some things up before Shizune gets overwhelmed? Both Jonin jumped off the giant fox's back, heading down to the village speedily. They appeared in the middle of the street, near Shizune who was attending to a half-dozen injured patients lying on the ground, a crowd of villagers around them. Kakashi, Guy, did you and Naruto deal with whatever caused this? Shizune asked, keeping her hands over a man's chest, healing chakra coating them. We don't think so. It vanished after Naruto got a hold of it, Kakashi answered. Do you need anything? No. Most of these injuries are simple in nature. In fact, they were all hurt by the houses being destroyed. Whatever the creature is, no one has survived an encounter with it, Shizune explained with a frown. When you say vanished, Naruto can't sense it right now, and he noticed it from the beach, Kakashi elaborated. Either it's gone for now, or it can hide itself completely when not on the attack. That didn't bode well, they all knew. They need plenty of rest and to take it easy, but they're stable, Shizune mused as her chakra faded away. Hey, Shizune, you mind following my tail? Naruto asked suddenly, his long limb reaching out into the village and pointing towards a specific building. Sure, Naruto, Shizune accepted as she looked at Kakashi in confusion. It's probably important. We'll talk to the villagers, Kakashi assured, nodding towards the tail overhead. Shizune nodded and took off in a run. People looked up at the golden tail in awe and wonder, with a respectful amount of fear. It was obvious that if Naruto wanted, he could crush the village with just that one tail. Shizune frowned as she reached the tip of Naruto's tail and heard the cries of a baby echoing through the night. She found the house and knocked on the door. When no one answered, she opened the door. Hello, is anyone home? Is everyone alright? Shizune called in. Second floor, Naruto called out before sniffing. You might want to hurry. Following his advice, Shizune headed up, following the cries of the baby until she reached a door. Opening it without another thought, she found a blue nursery room, and the crying baby standing in a crib while sobbing soundly for all that would hear. Shizune only looked briefly at the infant, seeing they were physically alright, before rushing to the body on the floor. A young woman, the mother presumably, collapsed and unconscious. Shizune checked her over and grimaced. Damn it, she's had a heart attack, Shizune realized, deducing it must have been caused by the fear and stress of the monster attack. Naruto took a deep breath as he tried not to linger on that, or on the smell of blood in the air. What had even happened? The creature had been looming over the village and had destroyed a few houses, but Naruto hadn't made out how it was killing exactly. He just heard the screams, the rattling, and the flesh tearing, and yeah, he wasn't going to dwell on that either. He wondered how things were going back in Konoha. Meanwhile, Sakura paced back and forth, biting her thumb while atop the Hokage monument. The village was on high alert. No new missions were to be assigned, patrols had been doubled, and everyone was waiting to hear any news on what was going on. Forehead, you're going to wear a trail there, Ino commented while leaning on a tree. They'll think Naruto was scratching on the monument. Sakura stopped to give her a flat glare. Just trying to lighten the mood, Ino said, holding her hands up in surrender. It's not like we can do much. Sakura sighed, hating that she was right. As genin, their only job was to remain on alert for new orders, if the situation became worse. Never mind, no one knew what the situation even was. I'm just worried, Sakura said before sighing in defeat. Who am I kidding? I'm getting scared here. You're not the only one, Ino assured. Hate him or not, no one thinks it's a good day when our friendly neighborhood Nine Tails is panicking. Yes, thank you, Sakura said, groaning with relief now that it was said. Naruto's a knucklehead. He's a lot more careful, but he's still the same idiot we know and love. Right, Ino said with a smirk. Sakura pointedly ignored her. But he doesn't get scared easily, and that was before he was a Biju. What the hell could have freaked him out now? You think I know? Ino asked skeptically. No, but I don't either. And Sakura looked back to the village. I don't think anyone does. And that's the problem. Ino tilted her head. What do you mean? Whatever happened in the north, judging by Naruto's path. He knew something was going on before we even got word of it, Sakura mused. And that's a bad thing? Ino asked in confusion. No, yes, kind of, Sakura groaned. It's not bad that he noticed, it's bad that there was something big enough happening that we weren't aware of. Ino crossed her arms against the cool night air. He sounded afraid, Ino recalled with a troubled look. And he ran straight towards it anyway. Sakura smiled fondly. That is Naruto. He froze up once, and then never again. Ino chuckled. Right, that crazy bridge mission you mentioned. We managed to get through that because we were a team, Sakura recalled with a distant look. But now, I think it's a bit hard for a Biju to have anything like teammates. Ino brought Sakura into a one-arm hug. Meanwhile, a zombie Biju, Shizune repeated slowly. The trio of ninjas had moved to the top of Naruto's head and said Biju had traveled away from the village under the guise of moving away to investigate where the beast had been last seen. It was certainly big enough to be a Biju, and it was some manner of skeleton, Guy admitted with a troubled frown. It has Biju chakra. Everyone started at Naruto's comment. Biju. Naruto, are you sure? As in absolutely positive? Kakashi asked in alarm. I couldn't sense the chakra at all, Guy said in agreement. Naruto briefly flashbacked to his meeting with Saiken before answering. Trust me, it's Biju chakra. I don't know if it's because I am one or something else, but I can tell, Naruto said, a rumble in his throat as he stared out into the darkness of the night. That's why I was heading up here to begin with. I thought it was one of the others. But the closer I got, the more I knew something didn't feel right. An undead Biju, Shizune said, sweat on her brow. But if that is really the case, then this thing is the old Kyuubi, or some phantom of it, Kakashi said, tilting his head as he heard a strange noise. He moved over to the edge of Naruto's head, peering down to the ground below. What is it? Shizune asked cautiously. Naruto's clawing at the ground, Kakashi answered, putting a hand on Naruto's ears. Naruto, listen, you need to calm down. I'll calm down when I know everyone isn't going to turn into zombies. Naruto retorted loudly. Shizune and Guy winced at the outburst, but Kakashi kept his cool. You're scared. Of course I am. I can't punch out a plague. That's Tsunade and Shizune's thing. Naruto pointed out, groaning, carefully rubbing his snout. I'm sorry. Just mildly worried about a zombie apocalypse now. Besides this skeleton beast, we haven't run into any zombies so far, Guy pointed out helpfully. It might be just a single entity. Maybe, but I don't like how all the bodies disappeared. That thing didn't smell like it had eaten anything. Naruto stopped suddenly. Naruto, Shizune called out, only for Naruto to suddenly turn. What is it? It's back, Naruto answered, baring his fangs. Where? How close? Guy asked as he tensed his muscles and prepared for a fight. Not close enough to want a rematch, Naruto answered, ears twitching. It's going for another village. Kakashi-sensei, Guy-sensei. I need one of you to stay here. Pervy Sage is about 5 minutes away and we can't afford to wait. Guy nodded firmly. I'll be able to catch up faster, all. Kakashi cut him off, placing a hand on his shoulder. No, your taijutsu was more effective against the bone than my attack. You go, I'll get Lord Jiraiya caught up. Guy looked briefly surprised before nodding in understanding. Be at ease, my rival. The handsome green beast will look after your enormous and youthful student. Kakashi sighed as his body flickered off Naruto's back, landing in the trees. If he was any lesser ninja, he might have lost his balance as Naruto took off, the gust of wind and dust harsh against the trees. He watched as Naruto sped off into the night. It was interesting to see Naruto so worried and worked up. He wondered what part of this disturbed Naruto the most. The idea of zombies, the giant skeleton monster, or just the possibility that this thing might be the old Kyuubi. He heard and felt a rumbling in the ground. Not Naruto's, this was different. Knowing it had to be the Sannin, he sent up a kunai with a paper flashbang tag attached, hoping to get his attention. Now I just need to explain, Zombie Biju, to Jiraiya. Meanwhile, you're sure he's not getting any closer? Shiroyasha asked sternly. Positive, Gensui-sama, a grass ninja answered. Whatever the new Kyuubi is doing, it's still in Fire Country. Thank you, dismissed, Shiroyasha said, waiting until he left to let out a sigh. The situation was complicated, to say the least. Placing a Jinchuriki on the border, that was one thing. It was a security measure no one would notice until someone tried to invade. But an entire Biju, rushing to the edge of the country. That was alarming and it was very, very noticeable. If it was invading someplace, any place, Konoha wasn't being subtle about it. And that was the problem. This was too blunt, too alarming. And to stop short of the border. Perhaps it was a power flex. Showing how fast their loyal Biju could cross the country, showing just how fast it could be at their doorsteps if they choose to antagonize Konoha and Fire Country. But why now? Were they already that confident in the new Kyuubi's ability to use that vast power? Or had someone, somewhere done something very stupid that required a show of force? Something still didn't sit right with her about all this. So, she turned to the only other person in the room. So, what do you make of this, Karen? The redhead swallowed thickly from her seat in the grass general's office. I don't know, Gensui-sama, Karen said with a cold sweat on her forehead. Then tell me what you do know, Shiroyasha said patiently. Karen nodded absently. It's strange. He ran up here at such terrifying speeds. But then he stopped, and he's been flaring his chakra ever since. It's like he's fighting something, but anything like that, I should be able to sense, especially while it's fighting at least. In theory, Shiroyasha mused absently. You're leaving something out, aren't you? Karen paused. Scared. Karen, I know this new Biju was in your head, Shiroyasha started, only for Karen to stand up abruptly. No, ma'am, I mean he is scared. Karen said in a harsh whisper. Shiroyasha stared for a long moment. The new Kyuubi, strongest of the 9, is scared. Karen nodded slowly. I thought it was another Biju, because what else could it be? But I don't sense anything. All I can feel is him. And he is as worried as he is angry, like he doesn't know what he's fighting either. That is troubling, to say the least, Shiroyasha said slowly. We need to keep an eye out for whatever is. Karen gasped, her entire body shaking as her eyes suddenly appeared to be unfocused and 1,000 miles away. Quote. Karen, Shiroyasha asked warily. He's looking at me. Gensui-sama, he's looking right at me, Karen said in horror. He can tell I'm sensing him. And oh, no, please no. Karen's terrified pleas got Shiroyasha from her seat, coming up to place her hands on Karen's shoulder. What? Karen, talk to me, what is going on? Karen shook her head as she grabbed her head. He's in my head. He's everywhere. He's mad, so mad, and he thinks it's us. Whatever it is, he thinks we did it. Karen, shut him out. Stop trying to sense him. Shiroyasha ordered. I can't. I can't. I can't. Karen whispered in desperate terror. I swear, it's not us. Whatever it is, it's not us. He thinks we did something. He's angry, and he is looking right at us. Shiroyasha increased her grip on the sensor. Karen, can he hear me? Karen inhaled sharply and slowly made eye contact with her. Yes. Yes. He can hear you. Karen swallowed thickly. He's listening. The smaller woman felt the hairs on her neck stand up, feeling the attention of a Biju being focused through Karen. To use a sensor as an unwilling conduit of sorts, was this the full power of a Biju, a living force of nature? Kyubi, Shiroyasha said firmly. Whatever this is, it wasn't us. The grass village has nothing to do with whatever you're fighting. This is not us. For a moment, the grass general swore she could feel the Kyubi glaring into her soul through Karen's eyes. Then, the redhead blinked and sagged, almost collapsing into Shiroyasha's arms. Karen, you okay? She asked in concern. Yes. No, Karen said with a sigh. I don't understand. How is he doing that? Or am I doing it? Why me? I already need to let people bite me to heal, why this too? Shiroyasha just sighed and let her presence comfort her, knowing she had no words to do so. Meanwhile, the monster loomed over another village, another pen of prey to seek out. It never got a proper chance. With a roar, Naruto came barreling onto it, latching onto it with fang and claw. It did not scream. It did not flinch. It did not bleed. It only rattled its bones. End of chapter. So, yeah, you're getting a look at what Naruto is fighting. This isn't something from canon, not really at least. Also, to clarify the cloaking ability, the monster has a Gensu type ability to hide, but its chakra is naturally colored, the same color as the night sky. Even if you see through the Jinutsu, noticing it would still be hard. And we get another reminder that to the other villages and especially to Eren, Naruto has become something almost eldritch. Which is funny for if they ever meet him in person, but also fitting that Biju would come off like that. It kind of helps seize the different perspective it can have on Naruto if he is someone's ally Konoha, Fire Country, or potential enemy, anyone that's going to threaten his allies and friends. Zombie Biju, Shikamaru repeated slowly. Seriously. We're aware of what it sounds like, Kakashi said evenly as he rode on the summoned Toad with Jiraiya and Shikamaru. Terrifying. Said Toad answered. It sounds absolutely terrifying. Jiraiya, what did you drag me into? Not now, Gamatsu, the Sannin said with a nervous sweat. It's less unbelievable than you might think. Shikamaru looked up at him with a furrowed brow while Kakashi scowled. What do you mean? No point in not saying anything, Jiraiya muttered. The seal, the one that kept the original Kyubi in Naruto. It was made by summoning the Shinigami. Shikamaru flinched at that, and given the sheer clusterfuck that is Naruto becoming a Biju, the possibility of some Shinigami chakra creating an undead Biju is, he trailed off uneasily. Well, on the list of reasons for Naruto to nearly give the village a heart attack, this falls under extremely reasonable, Jiraiya joked dryly. And you say this thing is invisible, even to the Sharingan. I can see through the illusions, but its chakra is practically the same color as the night sky, Kakashi answered in displeasure. But you said it fights like a beast, without much higher planning, Shikamaru mused. That's a very specific cloaking ability for something running on instinct. You can ask it in a second, Jiraiya warned, causing the Nara to look forward again. In the distance was a golden light against the darkness of night. From here, he could see a shadow rush to end from across the light. Never visible, but unable to hide the fact it was distorting the illumination. The light was obviously Naruto, flaring with chakra as he attempted to catch the shadow, claws slashing forth and tails lashing out as he snarled into the night. He can't find it because it's staying out of the light, Jiraiya muttered before smirking. Well, good thing Naruto managed to drag it away from any nearby towns. Get ready, Gamatsu. Shikamaru wasn't sure what that meant, but Kakashi knew exactly what to expect as the Sannin ran through the hand seals. Fire style. Toad flame bomb. Jiraiya yelled out with Gamatsu, a jet of oil rushing from the giant toad's mouth, and Jiraiya's fireball setting it on fire. The summoned toad angled the jet of burning liquid to spray a line just beyond where Naruto was fighting. Shikamaru quickly understood. The aim was not to hit the enemy but to reveal them. Naruto stopped and watched the sudden stream of flames that came down on the trees, lighting up the area. And there, between him and fire, was his foe. It was as big as himself, and covered in a shroud of dark chakra that could not hide it against these bright flames. The shroud hugged the monster loosely, just enough to still make out the quadrupedal form, and that its head was looking towards the unexpected flames. Naruto grinned wickedly and seized his chance. He rushed forth, and the creature snapped towards him in shock, but it was too late. Naruto barreled into it, latching on with fang and claw as he forced it to the ground. It struggled with the sound of 1,000 rattling bones, trying to knock him away and break free. Naruto ripped and tore and thrashed his way through the shroud, pausing only to take a better, proper look at what he was fighting. He wasn't surprised. It was a giant skeleton, something four-legged and an angular head. In the sockets were balls of baleful light that served as eyes. That was enough for Naruto. This time, stay dead. Naruto barked out, raising a fist to smash its head into dust. The head snapped away, the spine curving in a way more natural for a snake than a mammal. And like a snake, it jerked forth to bite Naruto's fist before he could jerk away. Naruto snarled, snapping his own head down to bite into the neck. Or spine rather. Allow me, Guy exclaimed as he leapt over Naruto and came down to deliver a mighty kick on the spine. Bone fragments went soaring around Guy and the rattling grew louder, sharper. Naruto tore back his head, taking the neck bones with him, beheading the creature. This proved to be a mistake. The headless beast suddenly leapt away, jumping through the flames and attempting to flee from the fight once again. Only to jerk to a halt, its body twitching. This is the worst idea I've ever had, Shikamaru said through gritted teeth, standing on top of Gamatsu, holding a hand seal in an effort to focus and maintain a shadow possession jutsu. A shadow possession jutsu used on a giant monster the size of Biju. Just hold it for another few seconds. Jiraiya said. Ready Gamatsu. Ready. The toad exclaimed, holding his twin blades at the ready. Shikamaru, stop the jutsu the instant we leap. Jiraiya instructed swiftly. Not a problem, just do it. Shikamaru said, voice straining. With that, Gamatsu rocketed forward as fast as he could in a single leap. The binding ended, and the creature was free to move. Earth style. Fisher. Kakashi called out, as a large chunk of the earth suddenly ripped open beneath the headless monster. Not enough to trap it, but enough to make it stumble and get stuck. It was all the time Gamatsu needed to come down. Blades sliced down each shoulder, cutting through ribs and shroud. He pulled both blades back, intending to continue the assault. He disappeared in a poof of smoke, the broken ribs having lurched out to stab the toad's belly, forcing Gamatsu to dispel or be killed. Damn, Shikamaru exclaimed as he righted himself, barely catching a tree branch that allowed him to change and slow his descent, landing on top of another tree. The cracking and breaking of bones drew his eyes back to the night sky. The undead beast stood there, its entire body shaking in place as the head and bones began to regrow and repair themselves. Its gaze was suddenly on Shikamaru, who was watching it intently. For an attack, and to study it. It opened its mouth, and Shikamaru prepared to dodge and flee. Earth style. Dark swamp. Jiraiya's voice rang out, the creature lurching as the fissure turned to mud, as did a large enough area to partially sink it into. It rattled and rattled as it tried to pull itself out, and was starting to make progress towards the edge. Then something hit the monster in the back. Namely, its own severed skull, bouncing off in a way that Shikamaru might find amusing if not for how tense the situation was. The skull crashed into the ground, just outside of the dark swamp, causing Monster and Chunin alike to turn and see who they both knew would be there. Naruto walked through the flames. He wasn't snarling or growling anymore. He was just glaring. Shrouded by flames, all 9 tails raised and blue eyes shining with wrath. Shikamaru never thought that Naruto, Biju or not, could look so terrifying. And, suddenly, Shikamaru realized that his tails were on fire. Infernal tsunami. That was the only warning the Nara had before Naruto did a front flip, his tails coming down and sending out an enormous wall, or wave rather, of fire. Shikamaru was clear of the attack, but even still, he was close enough to feel the intensity of the heat, gritting his teeth as he kept himself firmly on the tree. The creature was overtaken, lost to the flames as they rushed over, scorching trees black and mud drying into a barren, broken earth. Naruto stalked towards the site of the swamp, seeing a lone skeleton arm, charred black and reaching to the sky. It turned to ashes in the wind, Naruto's glare narrowing. His ears twitched and some tension left his shoulders. Everyone on my back. Now. No one protested. Naruto lowered a tail tip to make it easier for Shikamaru to leap up, joining Kakashi and Jiraiya on the head. Is that it? Is it dead? Shikamaru asked with an uncertain frown. He was already dead to begin with, Naruto reminded. You think it'll be back? Jiraiya asked with a pensive look. I can still sense the Biju chakra in the air. It's not here, and I can't tell where it is, but it'll be back, Naruto answered with full certainty. Where's Guy? Kakashi asked with a frown. We saw him fighting with you. I sent him back to help Shizune. That thing didn't get far into the village, but it got a big building, Naruto explained. Jiraiya frowned. Naruto, that might have. Look. Naruto snapped, entire body tense. You can lecture me on priorities when you can hear people screaming for help while dying under rubble because you didn't get someplace 10 seconds faster. Silence overcame them all, with only the cackles of the flames nearby. Naruto, calm down, Kakashi said, soft but stern. This isn't your fault. You've done more than anyone else could have. Naruto growled his displeasure but didn't argue. Instead, he stabbed a tail into the ground. Wow, okay. What are you doing now? Jiraiya asked in bewilderment. Someone has to put out the fire. I'm either going to put it out with dirt or. Naruto paused as his tail ripped out of the hole, covered in a coat of water. Or I can just use this. You can find water underground. Shikamaru asked slowly. How? After using my tails to control it so much, I kind of know what it feels like if I try to sense it nearby, Naruto answered uncaringly, swinging his tail out to spray water over the fires, dousing most of them, the rest quickly running out of fuel. Why? Can most people not do that? No. But you're made of chakra. I'm not the least bit surprised, Kakashi admitted casually. So, back on topic. Right. Anyone have any ideas what the hell that thing was? Naruto asked. Kakashi hummed. I think you established pretty well that it's probably a zombie Biju. Naruto rolled his eyes, his head muscles moving beneath their feet. Okay. Let me rephrase, anyone know how we kill it? 'Cause I took off the head and that didn't work. With those glowing eyes, you'd think the head would be a weak point, Jiraiya mused with a headshake. Naruto, Shikamaru said suddenly. You keep saying him, not it. Shika. We all have a pretty idea of who this thing is, or at least related to, Naruto said flatly. And yeah, the old Kyuubi was a guy. Which is almost disappointing in its own way, Jiraiya said, rubbing his head. What are you getting at, Shikamaru? I know your father well enough to know that tone. You have a thought. Naruto, you mind holding up that skull, if it's still there? Shikamaru requested. Sure, Naruto answered in confusion, reaching over to pick up the skull. He was almost surprised it didn't crumble in his hand. What about it? Quote. Guys, I can feel you all staring at the skull. I know I'm an idiot, what am I missing? Naruto asked with a frown. That's not a fox skull, Kakashi supplied helpfully. Naruto blinked. Then blinked again. In my defense, I've never actually seen a fox skull. Or a dog skull. Or any skulls that weren't rats or snakes in an alley. Maybe a bat. Naruto, Shikamaru interrupted. I'm thinking, okay, Naruto said definitively. So, what, you guys think this isn't a Kyuubi? It might be, but why would it have a lizard skull? Jiraiya speculated. Come to think of it, none of the Biju would have a skull like this. Which goes back to the Shinigami theory, Shikamaru said with a sigh. I'm sorry, the what theory? Naruto asked in alarm. Shikamaru blinked and looked at Kakashi. They both shared a surprised look before looking at Jiraiya. He doesn't know, Kakashi asked, more curious than anything. Jiraiya braced himself. In my defense, he never exactly asked about it. Ask about what? Naruto asked pointedly. I thought he would have heard it a few times by now. I know me and Tsunade mentioned it a few times before he went to the beach. Jiraiya defended before turning thoughtful. At least, I think we did. Will someone fucking talk to me here? Naruto demanded. The Shinigami sealed the Kyuubi into you, Shikamaru answered bluntly. Naruto said nothing for a long moment before speaking in a small, stunned voice. Come again. It was the Reaper Death Seal, Jiraiya answered with a sigh. It's what the fourth used to seal the Biju into you. Okay. Naruto said, still trying to comprehend that. Is that normal for Biju sealing? No, Jiraiya admitted cautiously. I was born, the Kyuubi attacked, and the literal death god sealed him in me, Naruto summarized before shaking his head. Hey, careful, Shikamaru said, barely keeping his feet attached to the fur. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to have to put that aside for another day, Naruto said. So, you think the Shinigami's chakra in the seal might have something to do with this? It's not impossible. The seal obviously went haywire to turn you into a Biju, somehow, Jiraiya explained. Which means we might need to use the same seal to stop this thing. This is the same thing that the old man used to take Orochimaru's arms, isn't it? Naruto asked solemnly. Let's put off the sacrifice option until we try just putting this thing in a new grave. You say that, after beheading it once already, Kakashi reminded. Yeah, well, maybe it'll stick next time, Naruto countered, but even he felt that was a lame point. Naruto might be onto something, Shikamaru mentioned, getting everyone's full attention. Did any of you actually see it as it was, creating a new head? Not particularly, Naruto mused as Jiraiya and Kakashi shook their heads. I kind of had a wall of fire in the way. Shikamaru ignored that comment. I got a pretty good look at it with the flames and everything. Something was crawling over it. Chakra, maybe. Naruto stiffened. Oh, that would explain a few things. And my worries of a zombie apocalypse grow. I'm almost afraid to ask, but what are you talking about? Jiraiya asked grimly. It might be better to have Shizune explain or show, Naruto explained. That boded ill for everyone. You sure it's not going to attack again? Kakashi asked cautiously. If it does, I'll try not to run off without you all, Naruto said, his tone more grim than any of them liked to think about. No promises though. Meanwhile, he's out of control and you know it. Tsunade turned from the window of the Hokage's office and glared at the old advisor. I don't know anything, other than Naruto thinks something dangerous is going on in the north, Tsunade said firmly. Homura retained a neutral scowl while Koharu glared at the fifth Hokage. Something dangerous. Of course there's something dangerous in the north. The Ninetales is running loose across the country. The old advisor pointed out. We don't even know if there is a true threat, since the Biju didn't deign to tell us more. Just demanding we send shinobi to follow it, Homura pointed out firmly. When any other shinobi of the Leaf sends word of an unknown threat entering the lands, we would investigate regardless, Tsunade retorted with a scoff. This isn't any other shinobi and you know it, Koharu said sternly. This is a tailed beast. A force of nature. Untrained and inexperienced, but he still wields the power to destroy entire countries. And now he's proven how unchecked he is. Or, if you'll get your heads out of your dusty old asses, you'd see he's being a very proactive ally to the village, Tsunade retorted unwaveringly. Both sides stared each other down, the room tense. The Lady Hokage is correct. Everyone turned in alarm at the words. Danzo. Koharu addressed in disbelief, confusion on Homura's face as well. Tsunade even raised an eyebrow at the unexpected support. Danzo was unblinking in the face of their bewilderment. I don't doubt Uzumaki believes there is an enemy he is racing to face, he explained. If it is a serious threat, then all the better to have a Biju face it. If it isn't, we show those watching how easily roused this Kyuubi's ire is. A lesson Danzo was very familiar with himself. But what about how the other nations and villages will see this, our Biju running loose? Homura pointed out with a frown. If we wish them to perceive him as a weapon, then all the better to display his power, Danzo restated. The teammates of the third Hokage shared looks at this before looking back to Tsunade. We don't agree with this, but we can see that your mind won't be changed, Koharu said in dissatisfaction. At your leave, Lady Tsunade, Homura prompted evenly. Tsunade scoffed and waved them out, leaving her with Danzo. Tsunade studied him for a moment. I'm surprised you didn't join them and try to convince me to consider sealing him. I'm sure they were as well. We had spoken of such things. When certain ears were not present, Danzo admitted easily. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. She had gotten a report from Jiraiya about the supposed meeting between Naruto and Danzo. What changed your mind? She asked evenly. The next time we meet like this, I will either believe you aren't a threat to the village, or I will make sure you're not. The words replayed in Danzo's mind, as did another topic of the meeting. You know the other villages are considering how to replicate this. Suna won't try it. Their position is too precarious and their Jinchuriki is already a great asset to them. More so than before the invasion. Their eyes met and both knew what the other meant. It was ready knowledge that Naruto had fought the Sand Jinchuriki to a bitter draw. But few in the Leaf knew the impact Naruto had left on Gaara of the desert. Kiri can't, for obvious reasons. Kumo is considering it in theory. Taki and Iwa are most likely to make an active attempt at it, Danzo informed, despite Tsunade being fully aware of this. If they succeed, their former Jinchuriki will either become their weapons or will turn wild and destroy them. In either case, against a Biju, another Biju would be a better defense than a Jinchuriki. That's not a bad point, Tsunade conceded. Danzo was tempted to tell her that it was a point Naruto himself explained to him but decided against sharing that tidbit. Unlike my fellow counselors, I am more concerned with what caused this reaction, Danzo mused. And I know what you are thinking, Lady Hokage. If I have a hand in this or knowledge of what's going on. The alarming thing is, I do not. Tsunade scowled at that admission. Is it remotely possible that Iwa or Kumo sent a Jinchuriki to test Naruto? No, but they might now. Being drawn to the border, I'm sure the other lands will be growing. There was an unavoidable terror that came with what Naruto was doing here. This part of the Fire Country had never seen him, only heard rumors and stories. To see a Biju stroll across the landscape, treating vast lakes as puddles and mountains barely as hills, was awe-inspiring at any time. But the closer he moved to the border, the more others had to fear. The idea of him crossing that imaginary line, of what that could mean, had so many people on edge. Invasion, war, just the wrath of a Biju set loose for some yet unknown offense. Yet, Naruto paid them no mind. Not this time, not right now. Naruto, you think you can do this? Kakashi asked idly from one the fox's haunches, watching the tree tops. There were many shinobi out there. Rain especially, but he was sure Grass and Valley had some watching from the south and east. Maybe even some from Stone to keep an eye on things. Naruto took a deep breath, and it sounded like a gale of wind to all nearby. Hanzo the Salamander. The name echoed across the lands like thunder, growing deathly silent in the face of his demand. Biju. Naruto's ears perked up as someone brave or foolish spoke up with a demanding tone. His gaze landed on a lone figure, an ordinary ninja wearing a rain headband and a breathing mask. He stood at the side of a dirt road, trees cleared a large amount on both sides. Lord Hanzo is not here. Go back to your masters and tell them he has no business with them. The ninja declared with bravado. Well, he's more stupid than brave, Kakashi mused, watching the exchange but not interfering for now. Naruto didn't respond as he moved towards the ninja, the earth shuddering with each step. The ninja courageously pulled out a katana, holding it up as if to threaten the Biju into halting. Stop. This road marks the border of Fire Country. Naruto stepped closer again. If you cross, everyone will consider Fire Country an invading nation. The ninja warned, sweat forming on his face. Naruto stopped with his hands right next to the road but yet not crossing it. The blade of the rain ninja trembled, eyes wide as he looked up at the golden beast that regarded him with such indifference. Hanzo the Salamander, Naruto called out again. The ninja gritted his teeth. I told you, he's not. One of Naruto's tails snapped, striking the ground, and sending trees and dirt flying. Lie to me again, he dared, not needing to raise his tone. I, he stuttered before falling backward, his blade falling out of his hand. That's enough. Get out of here, brat. Naruto watched intently as another man walked out of the trees. He was large, blonde, and had a bigger ventilator. In his hand was a chained blade that was like a miniature scythe in Naruto's opinion. I am Hanzo, the leader of the village hidden in the rain, he addressed firmly, arms crossed as his subordinate retreated quickly. What business does the Kyuubi and the copycat have with me? Oh, I was noticed, Kakashi said, rolling his neck before body flickering down, standing on Fire Country's side of the road. Hello, Lord Hanzo. Sorry for all the commotion. Enough chatter, Hanzo said firmly. If you're here to kill me, get on with it. If not, I have a civil war to fight. We're aware, Kakashi said with an eye smile. We just wanted to have a word with you. And you bring this beast to intrude on the edge of our lands. Just for a conversation? Hanzo asked with annoyance. Naruto gave a small growl. Because of the thing intruding in our own lands. Hanzo paused in realization. Your undead monster. What of it? We haven't seen it here. Really? Naruto asked. It wasn't a question of curiosity, but accusation. Hanzo started, if only slightly. You think I have something to do with it? If I had such a monster, why would I send it after you and not the fools trying to take over my country? Assuming those fools still live, Kakashi answered bluntly. After all, a Gashadokuro would require many corpses to form. A gash you threaten my country over an old legend? Hanzo asked in annoyance. You are talking to a giant fox made of pure chakra, Naruto reminded pointedly. Hanzo couldn't refute that point, and so ignored it. And what would you like? Me to let you stroll into my lands and search for a giant skeleton we might be hiding? Oh, we doubt you'd allow that, Kakashi said uncaringly. But you see, we have a low list of suspects since we've cleared Orochimaru of all people of suspicion, Naruto bluffed. He doubted it was Orochimaru, but didn't rule him out. Hanzo didn't need to know that, however. And barring an unknown party, you're the most likely one we can come up with currently, Kakashi remarked. You're isolated enough to keep it a secret, you have the bodies, and Kami only knows you have motives. Hanzo glared. I am not behind this farce, and I didn't come here to be interrogated. So like I said, either kill me or go back to your ghost hun. Hanzo stopped and grunted as Naruto suddenly flared his chakra. The sheer weight of it was crushing, even Kakashi strained under it. For miles, the ninja and the unlucky watchers on trembled and collapsed under the raw might as Naruto glared menacingly down at Hanzo. You nearly killed a pervert, a hag, and a creep, Naruto growled. Do you think you can kill a fox? Hanzo glared back, defiant despite a creeping fear. If this Biju decided to attack, he knew there would be little chance of fleeing. He steeled his resolve and held his weapon firmly. Naruto glared a moment later before his stare moved beyond Hanzo. Suddenly, without warning, Naruto brought his head up and sighed as he finally reined in his power. Well, this was a waste of time. Kakashi and Hanzo nearly fell over from the sudden lack of pressure from the chakra. The leader of Rain glared up in confusion. The hell? What just convinced you? Kakashi chuckled, scratching the back of his hair. Let's just say Naruto is an excellent judge of character. We honestly thought you might have died and were the Gashadokuro yourself. I haven't bit the dust yet, Hanzo said. You come to the border, accuse me, threaten me. You can at least tell me just what convinced you I'm innocent. Kakashi glanced up at Naruto, who shrugged. Well, to be honest, if you had the creature, you probably would have summoned it just now, Kakashi pointed out with an eye smile. Or one of your subordinates would have been talking about it, Naruto thought to himself, his ears twitching as he listened in on Hanzo's subordinates' nervous chattering to one another. Hanzo sighed and turned to leave. If there is nothing else, I have a war to win. About that, Naruto remarked idly. Would you like a helping tale with that? Hanzo stopped suddenly. Naruto, that is a step too far. We can't get involved in another country's civil war, Kakashi warned sternly. You're right. We absolutely can't get involved if we're not provoked, Naruto agreed with a strange, knowing tone that had many people on edge. But I think we're about to be provoked. With that, Naruto suddenly looked straight up, and more than just Hanzo and Kakashi followed his gaze. There, against the light of the sun, was a figure that none of them could clearly see. Yet despite being high above even Naruto, the figure's voice rang out clearly. Almighty push. Acting more on instinct than anything else, Naruto pushed his body forward to shield Kakashi and, incidentally, Hanzo. Both braced themselves as a massive wave of pressure and chakra washed over Naruto, a crater forming around them, expanding in all directions and destroying the surrounding forest. Finally, it ended and Naruto looked back up. That had a lot more kick to it than I expected. I could get knocked over if I'm not careful, Naruto remarked with a frown. I take it you must be Pain, leader of the Akatsuki. Kakashi stiffened at that. This just got bad, he realized grimly. If the Akatsuki intended to capture the Biju, they had to have the means or power to potentially subdue them for sealing. That's him then, Hanzo said, glaring up at the figure in the sun. Naruto tilted his head. So, are you just going to float up there or what? Pain descended, watching Naruto intently. The Biju restrained from attacking just yet, if only because Naruto got a strange feeling about this. It wasn't danger, per se, but it was strange. Something was very off about this person. Hanzo squinted however as Pain neared the ground. That face, the salamander said, feeling a memory picking at his mind. Didn't I already kill him? You know of me, Kyuubi, Pain remarked to Naruto without surprise. I'm afraid it is too soon to capture you. And here I thought arriving early was a good thing, Naruto snarked as he stared down at the orange-haired man. Hey, Hanzo. The leader of Rain acknowledged. He's part of the ones fighting against you. Tell me, did you just see him attack me, and Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked idly. Hanzo caught on quickly, smirking to himself. Indeed I did. Naruto, this might not be a good play, Kakashi warned, even as he pulled out a kunai. The alternative isn't much better, Naruto remarked. Besides, I doubt he showed up just to tell me the schedule. Indeed, Pain agreed. I have come to kill you, Biju. Naruto's face turned utterly blank at that. Sorry, but I have no plans of dying twice in the same year. Lord Hanzo, a Rain ninja showed up, bloody with a broken arm. No one looked at him, keeping their eyes on Pain. Most of our forces in the area are dead or injured from that attack. Then clear out who you can and fall back, Hanzo ordered. The demon and I have a god to kill. The ninja nodded before leaving. Pain eyed the retreating form. You presume I intend to permit survivors. Several blurs rushed towards the fleeing man, only to be intercepted by a golden tail. The man looked up in alarm as several tags exploded against the limb before running away. Conan hovered on a tree nearby, considering attacking again, but a glance from Naruto persuaded her not to. How merciful, for a demon, Pain noted coldly. Do you have any idea who you're even defending? Naruto raised an eyebrow. If you told me something terrible he's done, am I suddenly supposed to kill him when you just threatened to kill me? Regardless, it's a mute gesture, Pain informed. That man is already dead, same as all those loyal to Hanzo. Naruto narrowed his eyes before he stiffened. It was very noticeable on a Biju, like a mountain shifting in place. What's going on? What's wrong with him? Hanzo asked, brows furrowed. Hanzo, your men are getting butchered, Naruto answered with a growl. So, that's the kind of god you are. Good to know. Pain saw Naruto's arm move and fully expected him to strike up at him. Instead, Naruto suddenly turned and slammed his hand into the ground, seemingly at nothing. How did he? Conan whispered in alarm. Kakashi and Hanzo watched in interest and caution as Naruto pulled something hidden beneath the dirt. Or rather, someone. Pain dropped out of the air like lightning, fast enough to surprise Naruto for an instant. Pain landed beneath Naruto's raised fist and, using the pause to reach out his hand. Universal pull. Naruto tried to crush his fist, but his claws only grazed his target before the body slipped out. Kakashi, seizing the moment, appeared behind Pain with a kunai ready to strike in the head. But Pain didn't even look as he turned to deflect the offending arm, kicking Kakashi back with a powerful kick. Despite the cuts, the person who escaped Naruto's grip stood up, revealing another man in Akatsuki robes. The hell? Hanzo said, looking between the two. Kakashi shared the sentiment. The two men were distinctly different yet also identical. A different face, build, and everything. But they both had orange hair and the exact same eyes of purple eyes. Not to mention the piercings on their face. Though different in design, there were a lot of them and all looked to be made of the same black metal. I take it that one is important, Naruto remarked, studying them closely. Pain had no reaction from either of his bodies. I was careless. I was so certain that he wouldn't be able to smell the Naraka path underground, lying in wait for an emergency. I, like so many, was so mindful of a Biju's chakra that I didn't consider the power of his senses. Kakashi-sensei, get on my back. You too, Hanzo, Naruto ordered warily. I don't think he's out of tricks. Me. And I should trust you not to kill me. Hanzo retorted. I'll take my chances. Suit yourself, Kakashi said as he leapt up to Naruto's head. What do you think, Naruto? Was hoping you knew, sensei. What the hell are those eyes? Naruto asked with a scowl. No idea. I've never seen anything like them, Kakashi answered in concern. Any further conversation stopped as the Diva Path raised his hand again. Almighty push. Kakashi ducked just in time, feeling only the wind formed by the attack as it hit Naruto head-on. The Biju braced but did not flinch. Pain smirked. Naruto's eyes widened in alarm as several large poofs rang out behind him. Before he could even turn, two giant figures had leapt onto his back, fangs biting into his side. Naruto! Kakashi exclaimed in alarm as he stared at the summons. One was a giant bear with 3 eyes, the other a 6-legged hyena. Every eye on each beast had the same ringed eyes as Pain, with giant black metal objects piecing some part of their bodies. I got this, Naruto grunted, his tails tearing away and tossing back the hyena while he reached around to bite the bear. It was big, but smaller than him. Naruto was able to pull it off with just his mouth, his wounds rapidly healing already. He turned around and released the bear only out of surprise. Before him was a small army of giant beasts. All of them at least close to his size, each one different from the last. A 2-headed dog, a giant-billed bird, and much more. I didn't sense anyone else. Naruto said in surprise before glaring back at the two bodies of Pain. I get it, There's more of you. Worry about that later. Kakashi called out as the two-headed dog ran at Naruto, teeth bared. Naruto's eyes snapped forward, reaching up to grab the spot between the necks. He not only stopped the beast but slammed it into the ground. But the moment he finished, a black praying mantis was already slicing into his arm. Lightning blade, Kakashi called out, coming down on the large bug's head, impaling his first through the exoskeleton and brain. Good. These stay dead. Naruto grunted in agreement, turning to fend off another attack. Pain watched the exchange pointedly. I can't revive them with the Naraka path. It'd be too much of a risk, sending that body out so close to this fight, with Kakashi Hatake watching. As if to remind everyone of his presence, Hanzo appeared from behind, trying to attack with his weapon. Without even looking, Pain summoned a black rod to his hand and used it to block the attack. Eager to die, Hanzo? Pain asked disdainfully. I know I'm not crazy. That's the face of a dead man. How the hell are you still up and walking? Hanzo asked with a glare. A man did die that day, Hanzo. And what was born anew, was a god, Pain said dramatically, finally looking at him. I could have killed you at any time. But I wanted it to be with these hands. Hanzo didn't know what to think of that and didn't have time to consider it. Almighty push. The full force of the wave hit him, sending the rain leader flying. He turned his head and saw that he was heading straight toward yet another orange-haired enemy with the same eyes. This one had a hand outstretched as if to grab or strike him. Indeed, the human path of Pain grabbed his old enemy by the head. But in that same instant, Hanzo disappeared in a puff of smoke, a log falling to the ground. Substitution, Pain muttered, all of his eyes scanning for any sign of Hanzo, all the while the Kyuubi fought off more giant summons. Speaking of which, he was doing far better than Pain would have liked, watching as Naruto used his fangs to bite off the head of a giant-billed bird, turning to drive the beak into the side of a giant rhino. Pain narrowed his eyes as he saw that not only was Kakashi on the golden back but Hanzo as well now. Decided to join us after all? Kakashi asked rhetorically. Shut it, Hanzo muttered. Hey, Kyuubi, you got any way to clear these things out? With them all over me? Naruto answered with a growl. Yeah, I got one. Hold on and don't die. With that, Naruto spun around, using his tails to send the summoned beasts back, however briefly. Coming out of the spin, he raised himself high, on only his hind legs, standing almost upright. Know what he's doing? Hanzo growled out. No, this is new, Kakashi answered. Almighty push. Naruto growled as he was suddenly knocked forward, giving an opening for the injured rhino to ram him in the gut. With a growl, Naruto slammed himself forward, his hands impacting into the ground and the earth shattered. That was the only word for it. The earth shook and broke into many small broken islands that made up pieces of a broken puzzle. The giant beast stumbled, some becoming partially submerged and trapped, others stunned. Damn, that didn't work the way I wanted, Naruto muttered, grabbing the rhino off of him with one of his tails before sending it flying a good distance. I'm not sure I want to know what he wanted, Hanzo said to himself. Without giving the beasts time to free themselves, Naruto ran forth, to finish as many of them off as he could. He tore the throat out of one, biting the head off of a smaller one, and used a tail to break the back of another that tried to jump him. He didn't think anything overtly strange of the fourth one, a giant white spider. He reached down to bite its head from above. And the instant he did, he knew something was wrong. That didn't taste like flesh at all, and there was no blood. Boom. The spider glowed before exploding in his face. Meanwhile, Hinata looked up at the evening sky with a sense of trepidation. She had an uneasy feeling, the same one she had when she learned Naruto would fight Neji in the finals. The same as when she heard he went after Sasuke with the others. One of those had turned out well for Naruto, but the other. Hinata looked down. She had grown closer to Naruto, that much was undeniable. But she still felt so useless. Before, She couldn't bring herself to come out of her shell to offer whatever support she could, to help him in his literal or metaphorical battles. Now, however, she knew just being there, being his friend helped. Yet how does one truly help a biju? Support a giant beast in battle, soothe the worries of a force of nature. How does a person stand by another's side, when they shine like an eclipse the sun in a near literal sense? Aren't you afraid of him? Hinata was jolted out of her thoughts by the voice. Sister, she addressed in surprise. Hanabi tilted her head as she joined Hinata. Everyone else in the clan is terrified of him. Just using the Byakugan around him is painful. It is at first, but, Hinata said with a small smile. If you're careful, and do it slowly, he looks amazing. Like a beautiful flame, always bright and burning. Hanabi furrowed her brow. So, you're not scared of him, at all? Not really, Hinata admitted. But I am worried for him. He's a biju. I heard this skeleton isn't that strong, just hard to find. What does he have to worry about? Hanabi questioned skeptically. Hinata didn't answer, but Hanabi's expression softened as she saw the sorrowful expression on her sister's face. In silence, Hanabi took her sister's hand. Would you like to train with me, big sister? Hinata took a deep breath. I'd love to. End of chapter. So, yeah, Pain decided to bite off more than he can chew. Granted, this isn't a very one-sided fight due to all the tricks Pain has, and Naruto still is figuring out how to use his powers. He's op, but his only nerf is lack of experience with said op powers. Hope you all enjoy this start to the fight. Naruto wasn't sure what he hated most about the explosion he just suffered. The bright flash that disoriented him. The boom that deafened his hearing. The unappealing smell of clay and burnt flesh from the summons. Well, there was the explosion itself. Which stung like hell, mainly in the eyes and the tongue. A relatively small drop of blood dropped from his maw. Actually, yeah, it was the explosion. Universal. Oh, fuck off with that. Naruto snapped, one of his tail tips slashing against the ground, sending a slash of earth and stone to strike at the so-called god. Pain calmly but quickly dodged the attack, but immediately found that Naruto wasn't giving him any opening now. Attack after attack came from the tails. Nothing he couldn't deal with, but with 5 of the 9 tails sending blades of earth, sand, water, wind, and the occasional attack sending trees and rubble hurling into his direction. If he used universal pull or almighty push, it would leave him open to an attack that he would be better off not taking. He still had the Naraka path, but he wasn't confident in Naruto giving him the chance to revive any bodies. Naruto growled as he scratched at his head, looking around. There were still more summons to clear out, pulling themselves out of his earthen trap. Where the fuck did that bug bomb come from? Naruto. Kakashi yelled, now on Naruto's head and fighting, something. Something popped after being kicked away. Sensei, the fuck? Naruto asked, trying to ignore the need to scratch his head. It's Deidara of the Stone. He's a terrorist known for jutsu that use exploding clay. Kakashi warned urgently. Okay, but the fuck are you fighting on my head? Naruto asked in concern. He left you gifts, Kyuubi. Exploding clay fleas. Hanzo warned, fending off his own share of the smaller clay beasts. Quote. Oh, fuck that, sensei. Salamander. Get the hell off now. Naruto warned in frustration. The 2 ninjas only had a few seconds of warning to get down and off the biju as Naruto enveloped himself in a wave of golden chakra. All at once, the fleas of clay went up into the air, exploding all just away from Naruto's head and neck. Okay, you sculpting bastard. Where the fuck are you? Naruto called out, eyes scanning over the remaining summons he still had to deal with. None of them looked like they were made of clay at least. Hanzo glanced between the group of orange-haired enemies and the Kyuubi that still had summons to fight. Fox, how about we trade targets? Hanzo offered as he ran through a series of hand seals, cutting his thumb before slamming it down on the ground. Kakashi quickly recognized the situation and body flickered back up to Naruto's back. Naruto raised an eyebrow as a poof of smoke erupted, fading to reveal Hanzo standing on top of a giant salamander. It looked eyeless and was much smaller than Gamabunta for sure, but he got the sense that size wasn't the biggest factor with this one. It might have something to do with the creepy purple mist oozing from the creature's mouth. Shall we, Ibuse? Hanzo asked with a smirk beneath his mask. The creature made a strange croaking noise of agreement. Hanzo already sensed the attack coming, turning to block yet another ring-eyed enemy. Granted, this one was bald, but Hanzo was more focused on the sword that appeared to literally be part of his arm, which Hanzo was fighting off with his blade. Damn it, how many are you? We are the 6 paths of pain, the Asura path answered, right as the Diva path appeared behind Hanzo. And there will be no tomorrow for you, Hanzo the salamander, the Diva path finished ominously. Ow. Pain almost didn't get the chance to finish as Naruto turned, the Biju trying to smash the corpse of a giant gorilla down on top of Pain. He narrowed his eyes, redirecting his attack to the ground. Mighty push. The force propelled Pain's favored body away from harm, but could only watch as the mechanical Asura path was swatted away from Hanzo by the tip of Naruto's tail. He stared up at Naruto, who was giving him his full attention now. Any damage to the Biju, if there ever truly was any, had already healed. 6. Naruto mused. Hanzo, have fun with the summons. The leader of Rain nodded as he sped off on his own beast. Pain briefly considered another attempt to end him, but Naruto slammed a fist down on the so-called god, forcing him to leap back a great distance. Let's dance, god of the Akatsuki. Meanwhile, the earth trembled, even from miles away. Just what the hell is going on? Kuretsuchi mumbled to herself as she observed the distant battle with a pair of binoculars. Kuretsuchi, Akatsuchi said in concern. We need to return to Aiwa. The Tsuchikage. My grandpa is worried about this furball. He treats it like an explosion tag you can't dodge if you set it off, Kuretsuchi said with a frown. But he's having trouble with just a few rain ninjas. You know we can't act unless he crosses our border. We're not even sure if he's crossed Rain's. Akatsuchi reminded imploringly. Why don't we ask our tailed friends before deciding that? Kuretsuchi asked with a smirk as she turned to the 2 men with them. Han narrowed his eyes from behind his hat, standing with one hand in his kimono. Roshi sat on a rock with his arms crossed, their perch on the hill giving a good and safe location to watch the distant conflict. You want us to fight the Kyuubi, even if it's not approaching Aiwa? Roshi asked with a scuff. Are you foolish or ambitious? Kuretsuchi narrowed her eyes. The Kyuubi, new or old, is a weapon of Konoha. One they're basically flaunting now. I'm sure your beasts have some pride and want to prove to this human that stole their fellow Biju's power that he is not at their level. They do have their pride, Han agreed in an easy tone. But they will not interrupt his hunt for this skeleton monster. It's real? Kuretsuchi asked with narrowed eyes. The old ape says they used to show up more in the old days, whenever that was, Roshi informed, scratching the back of his head. Akatsuchi looked between the 3 in surprise. If this monster is real, is it a threat, even to a Biju? No, Han answered. That's why they want to see how he handles it. Kuretsuchi hummed. As appealing as letting something like that weaken the whole of Fire Country is, I suppose it is better if it is put down before it becomes a problem for us. But tell me, are they scared of the Kyuubi? Han and Roshi shared a look before Roshi answered. They said that if this was the old Kyuubi, what you're proposing would be suicide. For us, the hosts, specifically. The question remains, just how powerful this one really is, Han mused. Kuretsuchi tsked as she turned back to observe the battle. Cowards. Tell me, what bothered you more, grand brat of Onoki? Roshi barked out. That you can't challenge a Biju yourself. Or that your grandfather thinks that Kyuubi out there is the child of the yellow flash. Kuretsuchi didn't answer, just gritting her teeth. Meanwhile, people often thought having a bigger summon was the best option. That size was a factor of power. Those people tend to not realize that even though many summons were the same size as the mighty Biju, those summons had no chance against such power. Similarly, just because Ibuse the salamander was much smaller than many summons, he was still more than an equal to other summons bosses. Hence how Hanzo now stood atop Ibuse, who stood atop the corpse of a much larger tiger summon. Without sight or command, Ibuse gathered a poisonous mass within his mouth and spat it as a poison bullet. The purple mass impacted as both liquid and gas, right into the eye of a charging boar summon. It squealed in agony before falling to the ground. Hanzo held his blade at the ready as he surveyed the situation. Most of the summons were dead. In fact, it might be all of them by now, the poison from himself and Ibuse coating the area heavily. Deidara hadn't made an appearance yet, so he was either gone or hiding further away. Hanzo paused as an ant the size of Ibuse rushed at them from behind. With an almost disrespectful flick of the tail, Ibuse sent the controlled summon to the ground. Hanzo seized the moment, leaping down to stab the insect through the eye. If his blade didn't hit the brain, the poison coating it sure would. True enough, the oversized ant quickly shriveled up and succumbed to death. A loud bang drew his attention back to the northwest, and he saw the fist of the golden fox sending a body barreling into the ground like a comet. Something like that would kill most men. Pain scowled as he flew through the sky and saw that his human Asura path was destroyed. This was quickly becoming against his favor. The animal path was practically useless now, the same as the human path, but they were at least still bodies to keep the Biju distracted. The Naraka path was in hiding to revive the bodies when the chance arrived. That meant the Diva and the Preta were the only ones that might make a difference. A tail came barreling towards him. Almighty push. The tail paused, but it still kept pushing against the gravitational pressure. He glared, pushing more chakra into it. My pain is not that weak, Kyubi. Pain declared as the tail was deflected with a final pulse. Didn't ask. Naruto retorted, another tail slamming into the Diva path's backside before he could dodge. With all his strength and frustration, he flung the self-proclaimed god down to the earth and into the forests. Pain, however, smiled. Just what he needed, a bit of room. Conan narrowed her eyes. She knew that Pain could have dodged that attack, he had to have seen it coming with all the eyes he had on the battlefield. Which meant he wanted to appear like he had been struck down. So, what was he planning? Okay, that's 2 of you. 4 more. Naruto growled out. 2 more, right here. 2 of the bodies spoke in one, landing on top of Naruto's head, black rods coming from their hands as they made to stab out the eyes. Fuck off. Naruto yelled as he flared his chakra, long and hard. He could feel the bodies trying to stay rooted to his fur with their own chakra, but it was to no avail as they were sent flying as well. Push that, Naruto yelled, reaching up to grab the free-falling enemies. With a growl, he sent them down to the ground. He paused only for an instant to consider the broken bodies he just left lying on the ground. If this had been his first kill, or if he had been human still, this might unnerve him some. But he wasn't. It might have been all the dead bodies he had seen already, or maybe it was just because he could sense the other pains lurking about, or it could be him losing his humanity. He was hoping it wasn't exactly the last one. His ears pricked up as something filled the air. A sound, and an energy. He narrowed his eyes as he saw a black sphere rise out from the treetops, right where one of the bodies had landed. With a strike of 3 tails, he struck and shattered the ground while he reached up to grab and crush whatever the orb was. But it rose fast and high away even from his grasp. And Pain's voice echoed in his ears with 2 words. Planetary devastation. Naruto roared as he found himself blinded by rays of light, the orb lighting up while he stared at it. He felt the earth trembling beneath him as the spots cleared from his vision. He blinked until he could see clearly and the entire earth was breaking apart around him, huge chunks rising into the air. He could feel it pulling even on his own body, this feeling of gravity suddenly being inversed towards the sphere, which was rapidly becoming a giant ball of earth, stone, and trees. Naruto decided that just maybe the title of God wasn't just for show this time. Meanwhile, what the hell is that chakra? Jiraiya asked with a scowl. I was hoping you could tell me, Lord Jiraiya, the toad he was riding on answered in concern. The toad sage had redoubled their speed to rein when he felt Naruto fighting in the area. Why? He couldn't even begin to fathom. It was day, so unless it was the Hokage, there should be nothing for Naruto to fight out there. Then again, Jiraiya had been heading there to check just that, if the undead beast's grave was in the area. Maybe Naruto had found it first. But that didn't make much sense, the Hokage's chakra wasn't this easy to sense. Just what have you gotten into, Naruto? Meanwhile, what had he gotten himself into? Naruto wondered when his life had gotten this strange. Curse marks were one thing, sand demons too. But how did it all go from him being a megaton fox that was hunting for an undead beast to floating in the sky as some piercing obsessed freak tried to bury him inside of a mini moon? Maybe it was his imagination, but he felt like several levels of absurdness were skipped. He growled as he found himself on the moon-like structure, being pelted by various sizes of boulders. He tried to pick himself up, but the gravity pull and the buildup of stone and earth around it was slowing him down. Worse than trudging through water. From his upside-down position, he eyed where he was fairly sure the bastard was. He pulled one of his tails free and sent a blade of earth down. Sadly, the jutsu failed as the element just ended up being pulled back into the mass that was trying to swallow Naruto. Trying, and slowly succeeding. He could feel and hear pain struggling, almost screaming from the strain to bring more and more up in an attempt to subdue him. Naruto was at a loss for how to beat this. Riding it out might be best for now. Not that he stopped struggling, he didn't like the idea of being buried alive, thank you. But pain definitely couldn't keep them up forever. However, the big concern now is what the hell was the end goal of this? Were they going to try and seal him, or just drop this entire thing with Naruto landing headfirst at the bottom? Because he didn't know how much it would take to kill a Biju, but dropping a tiny moon on him seemed like a good place to start trying. He gritted his teeth as more stones and dirt pelted his face before. Pain squinted the eyes of his Petra path, having gathered by the bodies for the Naraka path to heal. He studied the growing, enormous contrast he had made in the sky and saw that the golden fox was no longer visible. I think he actually gave up. Naruto, however, had not given up. Wow, that worked, he groaned, now inside a small cavity of the stone and earth. Small for him, at least. He had used all 9 of his tails and both of his hands, but he had managed to force an opening inside, his tails now against the walls. His chakra flowed through his tails into the groaning stone, trying to keep it from all collapsing in on him. Now he had a moment. A moment to make a plan to get out of this mess, and see how far this pain would take this jutsu. Still, he hadn't even known something like this was possible. He found himself grinning despite everything. It almost had his blood pumping again. I hope Kakashi-sensei is having more luck than me. Meanwhile, Kakashi indeed had been luckier than Naruto. I'll kill you next time, you Cyclops bastard. Deidara's angry voice rang out as the man left the area on a giant clay bird. Now sporting a missing hand. Kakashi was rather proud of that, even if it had got him blown into a tree so hard it dislocated his shoulder. Still, with that enemy retreating, he turned his attention to his fluffy student's ordeal. Kakashi had seen the giant sphere of stone forming from the beginning. He had already gotten over his shock and awe, for the most part. So, the only things to slow Naruto down so far are an undead Biju that teleports, and someone trying to bury him in a miniature moon, Kakashi mused to himself, popping his shoulder back into place. Yeah, that sounds about right for him. End of chapter. And the fight continues on. Yeah, planetary devastation is the big WTF moment the first time it gets used, even for Kyuubi Naruto. It didn't really stop him, but it has slowed him down for now. Meanwhile, others are watching this still. But yeah, Kakashi managed to chase of Deidara, even cost the bomber a hand in the process. Because Kakashi is badass. Not much else OT say. Fight will end next chapter. Hope you enjoyed this. It seems we finally put a stop to him, Toby remarked as they observed the battle from afar. Quite a handful he is, White Zetsu mused. Don't be cocky, Black Zetsu warned. The power of the Nine Tails has always been absurd. If not for the existence of the Sharingan and the first Hokage's wood release, the original would have never been sealed. And even then, very few could safely hold it, Toby acknowledged. But for now, this Biju is still but a child, throwing around a power he still does not fully realize. I'm not so sure, Black Zetsu said evenly, eye narrowed as he watched the floating moon. Nor should you be. Never has this happened. The first of anything should rarely be underestimated. Toby said nothing, watching on, his Sharingan eye drifting to where he knew Kakashi had been. He wondered what he would do now. Fight on, retreat, nothing. He'd have to check if he died from this battle. He doubted that, but he would rather know if Kakashi would be around to experience the infinite Tsukuyomi or not. There was a rumbling and his gaze drifted up to the moon once more. Meanwhile, Yu Kasukabe frowned as she rode on the back of a large white wolf. She could feel the hound growing worried under her. She couldn't blame the she-beast. She could see and hear so many animals rushing far, far away in the opposite direction they were going. Fleeing the wrath of a force of nature. The Kusa Gensui had sent her out to observe the situation, to bear witness and report just what had happened here. The Kyuubi declaring, warning them that he was heading to the Rain Village, just so they in grass would not think they were the target of his interest, or ire. Yu's expression dimmed as she recalled Karen. Ever drained and mentally troubled by the connection she now had with the Kyuubi. A being like that casually and effortlessly being able to enter her mind, to whisper into her thoughts and see through her eyes. Yu could strangely relate, able to form temporary connections with beasts similarly. But the gap between her and a forest animal was minuscule compared to the vast abyss that was between Karen and the Kyuubi. A rumbling was heard over the trees. What was that? She wondered, stopping the wolf. Go, run off, she ordered as she released her bond with the creature. The wolf whined in primordial fear, fleeing for its very life. With that done, Yu scaled the nearest tree to get a view of what was happening. Her face didn't show it, but her heart almost dropped. Is that a moon? She muttered, trying to understand the sheer wrongness of how and why there was a giant sphere of earth and stone hovering in the sky. What kind of jutsu could do something like that? What kind of chakra would? Is that the power of the Kyuubi? She whispered. No. She stiffened, slowly looking to the branch next to her, and found a figure she knew only by reputation. By what she was and how immediate of a threat she could be to her village. Fu of Waterfall, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi. That is the power brought to bear against him, she said, and only now turned to look at you. We're both here for the same reason. There is no reason to fight. Yu hesitated before nodding, very slowly. She had no plan of testing just how much of her Biju this Jinchuriki could channel. Their attention was drawn to the small moon once more, as a great rumbling echoed through the air and stones shook loose from the sphere. Meanwhile, within his prison of stone, Naruto poured his charka into his limbs. It grinded, melted, and just plain moved stones away as his power forced the rocks to bend to his will. Fists and tails pushed the opening around him wider and wider. He could feel it, the pressure of the jutsu and the earth trying to collapse in on him. But compared to treading on the ocean floor, this was only mildly more troublesome. That said, he was feeling borderline claustrophobic in this space. With a great roar of defiance, he slammed his fists downward. The explosion knocked him back against the wall, but it also destroyed a lot more of the stone down in front of him. He tilted his head as he looked down and saw a black orb hovering there. Stone began to envelop it again, pulled towards it by a gravitational pull. The hell? Oh, right, that orb was pulling everything up towards it. So I guess that means up is the way out in here, even though I was buried upside down. This is weird to think about. The cave walls pressed down more above him. He exclaimed, pouring more chakra into his tails to keep it back. He frowned as he felt his chakra being drawn away and dispelled. What is? He frowned as he saw, or rather sensed what was going on outside. He wasn't sure how, but this so-called god was drawing out his chakra and spreading it through the surface of the stone. Probably trying to seal him. Seal him. Wonderful. Well, he took solace in the fact that no one from Konoha tried to do it first. But then he let his anger mount as he realized this multi-bodied freak was trying to trap him in here. Fine. You want my chakra. Take it. Naruto called out with a growl. Opening the metaphorical floodgates, he let his chakra blaze, within him, out of him, and all through the stone. On the surface, Pain and his paths continued to apply seals with Conan's help, using the black rods to help mitigate the Biju's chakra to some extent. Rods and seals were being applied all over the surface, further securing the trap. Conan watched it all cautiously, keeping mindful of the location of Nagato's true body. It looked like they had managed to pull victory from defeat, but something about this felt too easy. As if to confirm her suspicion, a golden glow formed beneath the orb's surface. The seals pulsed and the black rods rattled. Pain blinked before his bodies redoubled their efforts. Only the diva path remained idle, floating just above the spherical prison. To think it is this powerful, Pain mused to himself. He was pushing it. His body, his real body, was already taking a toll from using planetary destruction. If he tried to increase it more, he might run out of chakra altogether. He glared in frustrated fascination as the top surface of the mini-moon began to bulge like a bubble was trying to escape it. The seals began to burn away and the black rods dislodged from the stone like arrows. One almost stuck him in the head, if he hadn't grabbed it at the last second. It seems this gambit has failed, he concluded grimly. With that, the bubble burst open like a volcano, stones flying like yellow-flamed comets as they flew through the air. From the hole climbed out a thoroughly annoyed Kyuubi in all his golden glory. With one hand grabbing the loose stone, Naruto hurled a handful of stone at the flying god. Almighty push, Pain declared, pushing the attack away without effort, the rocks falling away. And a slash of chakra-imbued wind caught him by surprise, grazing a scar upon his face. God and demon stared at each other for a long moment. It became very clear that this was a battle of attrition and it was obvious who would run out first. And Naruto felt gravity change again. Oh, you Naruto growled as the floating sphere began to fall, slowly spinning in an attempt to crush him between it and the earth. Enjoy your victory, Kyuubi, Pain said. Finally he turned to leave, having already moved his path to leave the immediate area. Naruto growled as he ran up the side as the sphere spun and fell while breaking apart. At the last moment, he leapt off, just in time before the impact and resounding boom echoed over the area. The shockwave covered the area in dust and debris, destroying everything in the surrounding area. Behind you, Conan called out in warning. Pain turned around and saw a giant boulder flying towards him. With minimal effort, he waved his arm to the side and sent it off its path. His brow furrowed as the stone exploded in midair. Not like Deidara's work, but more like a jutsu, dispelling. He realized too late, as the jaw of the Kyuubi emerged and snapped shut, the Biju falling to the ground with a colossal thud, the diva path still in his jaws. Yahiko, Conan whispered in shock as she saw the body of her old friend in the fox's mouth. The left side was in the mouth, caught between just two great teeth, the head and right limbs hanging outside with blood gushing from the mouth and body. The diva path grimaced from the damage. All Might. Naruto bit down harder in response, cutting the body in half, cold blood spattering against his maw. Hidden nearby, Nagato gritted his teeth in frustration at the loss of Yahiko's body. Much as he hated it, he knew this was a defeat. Without the diva path, he had no chance of competing with that power. With a disgusted grunt, Naruto spat out the body. Ignoring his desire to not taste human flesh, there was something cold and wrong about that body, even the blood. He could sense Pain's other bodies finally retreating. He scanned the horizons with a daring look. Anyone else? Naruto called out. He was mentally spent and wished nothing more than to take a nap after all of that. To the east, Yu and Fu dared not move, lest they drag the Kyuubi's ire onto themselves. To the north, Kuretsuchi glared as she felt the Kyuubi's blue eyes linger on her. Or maybe, the Jinchuriki with her. To the west, Zetsu and Tobi watched on in silent contemplation. And to the south, Naruto. The golden fox turned to regard the giant toad and Jiraiya with annoyance. Pervy sage, your ass couldn't be later to the show. What show? What are you doing here? Jiraiya asked in confusion, looking around at the battlefield, complete with a literal mountain of stones, a wasteland where a forest had once been, and a lot of dead summon beasts. The toad summon was respectfully wary of that last fact, staying silent while the Sannin and the Biju talked. Fought a god, got put in a moon, busted out, and bit the bastard in half, Naruto answered bluntly, listing off each with a raised finger. That explains nothing. Less than nothing, Jiraiya said in exasperation. In my defense, this was all Kakashi-sensei's idea, Naruto informed shamelessly. Speaking of him, you mind helping him? He's on my back and about to fall off from chakra exhaustion. And a broken arm, he thinks. Jiraiya shook his head and resigned himself to the situation. Thanks for the ride, he said to the toad, canceling the summoning after he jumped over onto Naruto's head. True enough, Kakashi was laying face first on the back of Naruto's neck, holding onto the fur with one hand. What did you do? Fought Deidara. Chased him off, Kakashi answered shortly, due to the exhaustion and pain. Hanged Naruto into a boulder. Took a lot more out of me than I thought it would. You hanged a Biju. You're as crazy as your sensei, Jiraiya said with a head shake as he helped Kakashi up and gave him a chakra replenishing pill. Anything else I should know? Yeah, we made a friend, you know him, Naruto said with a smirk. Hey, Hanzo, want to go meet the fire daimyo? What? Far away, Yu tilted her head at the outburst. Is he brilliant or crazy? I can't tell. He's clever, Fu said. Or you assumed it was Fu and not her Biju. So, in a way, both. Naruto, you cannot take Hanzo the damn salamander to meet the daimyo out of the blue. Jiraiya protested. They were on the ground in front of Naruto, retrieving the two halves of the body Naruto had bitten in half. Kakashi had retrieved the larger half with the head, lacing it into a sealing scroll, while Jiraiya did the same to the smaller chunk. Oh, don't get your hair all twisted up, pervy sage, Naruto said with an eye roll. I'm not inviting him into the palace or shit. I just don't want his ass dying on us before we talk to the daimyo. Why, exactly, would I want to meet with your daimyo? Hanzo asked neutrally, ignoring the wary looks the toad sage was giving him. Call it a hunch, Naruto said with a drawl. I mean, I'm assuming you want help with your civil war. Jiraiya sighed, looking to Kakashi for support. Kakashi, please talk sense into him. Can't. He's right, this was my idea, so I owe him a turn trying a bad idea, Kakashi answered with a painful shrug. Besides, I kind of want to see where he's going with this. As you said, I have a civil war to deal with. I can't just leave for pleasantries with a foreign leader, Hanzo said flatly. First off, I think we all know you're not the type that likes that shit anytime, Naruto reasoned flatly and got no arguments from anyone. But fine, sure, run on back to getting your ass kicked when that god decides to finish you off. I wasn't exactly idle while you were almost sealed, Hanzo retorted pointedly, the bodies of the dead summons still littering the area. It was strange, most summons left upon taking enough damage, but these stuck until their very deaths. And dead summons didn't always head back to where they were summoned from. You're a tough bastard, but I don't think you have a way to counter a mini moon being dropped on you. 'Cause I don't. I can just get out of being buried inside one. Naruto pointed out. Hanzo admitted that was a concern. The power this so-called god had displayed was something he had never heard of, something to rival the likes of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju, something mighty enough to make even the Kyuubi struggle. What would even be the point of me going? Hanzo asked pointedly. Again, why would the daimyo help me? I can think of a few reasons, Naruto answered honestly. Naruto, you cannot threaten the daimyo, Jiraiya stressed pointedly. Yes, that is definitely something you shouldn't do, Kakashi agreed warningly. The maid you think I would. Why would I be ass enough to threaten him? Naruto asked in confusion. You do realize that you asking for anything can be taken as a threat, right? Hanzo asked, questioning the Kyuubi's self-awareness. Nah, I'm on good terms with the guy, Naruto waved off. When did that happen? Jiraiya muttered to Kakashi, who shrugged. Even if I felt like this was worth it, my village might be on the verge of falling to the enemy right now, Hanzo denied firmly. Fine. I'll talk to the daimyo and pervy sage will deliver the message to you if he okays helping you out, Naruto informed. You know, assuming your ass is still alive by then. Wait, why am I being volunteered for this? Jiraiya asked with a frown. 'Cause a regular messenger would get killed with that pain guy wandering about. Naruto said, gesturing to the remains of the mini moon. So either you do it or I will. The Sannin is doing it, Hanzo said firmly. I do not need a Kyuubi wandering into my land to play messenger. I know you're trying to insult me, but I'll take an excuse to walk to someplace new, Naruto said with a smirk. Jiraiya just sighed and resigned himself to this insanity. Well, I guess I should be glad time hasn't withered you too much, Hanzo, he said with cautious praise. I hear it has done well for you and those other two. In terms of power, that is, Hanzo said, regarding the Toad Sage as well. But I hear time has been unkind to you three in most other ways. Jiraiya hummed, knowing there was no word against that. Being a shinobi often meant dying young or living long enough to see your comrades die or crumble in the line of duty. Naruto watched the exchange idly, his ears twitching as he kept a lookout. Their watchers had mostly left. Mostly, he mused, glancing to the north again. Miles and miles away, he could still see her lingering on that hill, eyeing him with some form of envy that he didn't care for. Iwa, the hidden stone. He wondered if they were going to be a problem, or just her. He got the feeling that even when the Hokage was dealt with, his battles would be far from over. He could see it, smell it, taste it, the hate, the envy, the rage, the fear. So much attention on him and the shock of his existence was wearing off. Others were no longer stunned into inaction, this so-called god proved that much. That was fine with Naruto. An entirely peaceful life was never in the cards for him. End of chapter. And there we go, end of the battle. It was kind of a draw, but Naruto came out better than Pain. But we also had Tobi and Zetsu keeping an eye on things, among others. To top it all off, Naruto plans to get Hanzo some help in his civil war. Keep in mind that nobody here knows how Pain's powers and bodies work. None of them know if he can do planetary devastation with any of the bodies or other things like that. So Naruto is taking the safe bet and saying that Hanzo would probably still get killed by Pain. Hence why Naruto wanted to bring Hanzo along. But not all plans go without a hitch, so Hanzo is staying to make sure his side of the war doesn't fall apart. Jiraiya mulled over what Kakashi had told him, about everything. Okay, I understand most of this. You had a lead, Tsunade pointed you at Hanzo because he fit. I honestly had the same thought, Jiraiya admitted. So that's why you showed up, Naruto murmured in thought as he walked back towards the palace of the fire daimyo. But why did you try to engage the leader of the Akatsuki? Jiraiya asked with a frown, looking over his shoulder at the back of Naruto's head. Kyuubi or not, that was pretty damn reckless. Naruto grunted but made no comment. Jiraiya sighed. The daimyo might not be happy about this, almost dragging Fire Country into another country's civil war. Almost nothing, Naruto remarked. Naruto, This isn't a game, Jiraiya warned. Did I seem like I was playing around? Naruto deadpanned. No, but you clearly don't get that your crossing into another country can be seen as an act of war on our part, Jiraiya countered pointedly. Naruto said nothing as they continued to the castle. Kakashi hummed but said nothing about the little disagreement between the Sannin and the Biju. He got the feeling there was more that Naruto wanted to say on the subject but was biting his tongue. Either out of being mentally exhausted from the fight or another reason, he wasn't sure. He noticed that change in Naruto over time since becoming the new Kyuubi. He was still loud, obviously, and spoke his mind. But he did keep some things close to the chest. He had to. At his size, silence was the only way he had any kind of privacy, any kind of secret. To a ninja, secrets were valuable, currency even. How precious they must be to Naruto, who often had to choose between saying something everyone would hear or saying nothing at all. It was amazing to observe and think about. The power, even the form, probably wouldn't affect Naruto's personality much if he was just smaller. The size of him was ironically the biggest thing creating a gap between him and other people. He could easily imagine a golden ninetales with playful blue eyes running around Konoha and messing with people, happy and content. Maybe the size of a horse, maybe smaller. But not this big. Amazing to realize what details mattered most in a situation. Jiraiya sighed as the palace was growing incredibly close. Just let us do the talk. Fire Daimyo, Naruto spoke up calmly, underlined with tiredness and frustration at the situation. Jiraiya needs a word. Something happened at the border. And I would appreciate it if a medic or someone could take a look at Kakashi-sensei. Copycat and Toad Sage looked at each other with interest at Naruto's action. He says you're welcome to the healing ward, Kakashi-sensei. Pervy Sage, he's expecting you, Naruto informed flatly, looking at the setting sun. Now excuse me while I keep guard for the bastard. The pair had little choice but to go along with it, jumping off before Naruto stepped further away from the palace, finding his preferred mountain to keep watch from. He let his mind wander while it could. Hanzo wasn't behind the Hokage, nor was he the source of it. But the Akatsuki showing up. Were they involved or just opportunist assholes? In either case, they failed to kill him. But pain wasn't gone. Naruto wasn't even confident that killing that body was a truly crippling move. He could be back with the same tricks another day, and more if he was smart. Not to mention there were so many others watching that fight with pain. He hoped he gave them something worth reporting. He was just glad the other Biju hadn't gotten involved. He had no idea where he stood with them, and that was not the time or place to find out how many were willing to give him the nephew treatment like Saiken. Saiken. He wished he could head back south and talk to the slug right now. It was nice having someone who openly called him family, who cared and worried about him. Not that he didn't appreciate Iruka and his friends back in the village, but it was probably just having someone on his level that he could relate to and talk to. Ask questions about being a Biju. Cycling back, Hanzo was no longer a suspect. Which left a big gaping question of who or what the Hokage was. Meanwhile, you were attacked by the golden goose. Shizune repeated in interest. It tried to eat me. Choji said, covered in bites and scratches. I don't suppose you were able to capture it? Shizune asked as she healed the boy. No, it flew off the moment we tried, Shikamaru answered. So if we see it again, should we try to kill that bird, bring it alive, what? Ino asked uncertainly. Lady Tsunade would like it alive unless it proves deadly, Shizune answered with a hum. These wounds are very stubborn. Wounds can be stubborn, Choji asked, wincing a bit in pain. It's what we medic ninjas call it when chakra or something else is hampering our ability to heal someone, Shizune explained. Considering that Goose seemed to have absorbed some of Naruto's chakra. Does that make it a mini Biju? Ino asked in alarm. Is it going to get bigger? Shizune paused before smiling awkwardly. We hope not. Squawk. Ah, he's returned for me. He wants my fingers. Choji screamed, jumping away from the honking sound. Choji, That's not. Shikamaru stopped as he looked up and saw that it was indeed the golden goose outside the window. Thankfully, it wasn't flying towards them. You can stop hiding, it's flying away. Shizune momentarily ignored her patient, who was shivering in fear under the hospital bed, as she made her way to the window and watched the bird flying away into the coming night, feathers bright against the darkening skies. Well, that's not ominous at all, Ino remarked with a dry tone, voicing Shizune's sentiments. Shizune had a feeling tonight was going to be interesting. Maybe not here, but somewhere. Meanwhile, I see, the fire daimyo said, sitting on the daimyo's cushioned dais while Jiraiya knelt after delivering the impromptu report. To summarize, our good Biju was attacked while investigating a possible lead on this grave beast. That was one way of putting it. By someone powerful, evidentially. Kakashi of the Sharingan told me this man, Pain, created something that was essentially a small moon to try and trap Naruto. If I hadn't seen the aftermath, I might not have believed it. Troubling indeed. There are only a few people in all of history that could trade blows with the Biju, the daimyo noted in contemplation. I take it there were witnesses. Everyone was watching. Jiraiya scowled upward in annoyance at Naruto answering in his place. At least 3 of the others were there, Naruto added in. Others? The daimyo asked curiously. He means the Biju, or the Jinchuriki rather, Jiraiya filled in. I'm sure every nation is on high alert after hearing there was a battle on the border with the Kyuubi. The daimyo nodded. And this man, Pain, is not only the leader of a rebellion in the Land of Rain but is also the member of this group of elite rogue ninjas. Tell him who they are and what they're after, or I tell everyone, Naruto warned pointedly. The daimyo raised an eyebrow, giving Jiraiya a pointed look as if telling him not to hold anything back. Jiraiya sighed. My spy network says they're a group with the aim of gathering the Biju. Their members include many high-profile criminals. Itachi Uchiha, Deidara of the Stone, and Kisame Hoshigaki to name a few. Orochimaru was among their numbers before he had a falling out with them. I see. I think I understand the situation. Thank you, Jiraiya. Is there anything else to report, or that you need? Just that Naruto wanted Hanzo of the Salamander to meet with you, but the man felt he was needed most in his village after that attack, Jiraiya explained neutrally. The fire daimyo hummed. It seems I was correct in my guess. I'll have my envoy send word to the Land of Rain of possible aid. Jiraiya blinked. Did the daimyo just concede to Naruto's prompting to give aid to another nation? My lord, you wish to involve the Land of Fire in another country's civil war. Are you not worried about how other countries might view this? I mean, it'd be kind of stupid to let people like that have a whole country to play with, right? Naruto asked as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. And the daimyo nodded in calm agreement with that sentiment. While I feel no obligation to aid this Hanzo in keeping hold of his country, freely allowing it to fall into the hands of such powerful criminals would be to allow them to grow as a threat. Speaking of which, do your spies know if they are still active as mercenaries? I know my fellow daimyos recommend their services once or twice, but I have a certain healthy distrust for rogues such as them. Jiraiya conceded that reasoning was a good point, but it all still felt rather odd, too easy in some ways. Not often as of late, no. Except for Kakuzu, but his desire for money means he'd always be a mercenary on the side. Any further conversation was cut short by a small tremor in the ground. Naruto, the fire daimyo asked, glancing upwards. Something's going on out here, Naruto said, his grumbling just barely loud enough to make out clearly. The Toad Sage shared a nod with the fire daimyo before disappearing in a blur, quickly coming outside to a high balcony. Jiraiya quickly saw what Naruto meant. The clear skies overhead, illuminated by a partial moon, were rapidly becoming darkened by thick clouds. They were rolling in far too fast, and Jiraiya could feel a heavy chakra in the air that wasn't Naruto's. Someone is differently directing this thing, or it learned a new trick, Jiraiya murmured. Both are bad. Naruto grunted in agreement as he let some of his chakra slip, his golden fur becoming the only source of light beyond the torches of the castle. Until, of course, the flames started going out. Naruto's eyes snapped to the palace in alarm. Jiraiya, Kakashi, everyone. The skeleton minions are in the palace. Shit, Jiraiya said, looking down as he indeed heard a rattling sound coming from the courtyard. We'll handle it, you deal with the big one. Naruto would, as soon as he found the still. This was getting bad. The humanoid skeletons were invading the palace and had the advantage the darkness didn't hinder them like it did the soldiers who were busy trying to mount a defense and relight torches. Torches that would not light. Naruto found himself without an opponent for an unbearable moment before having an epiphany. Gathering chakra into his tails, he grabbed at the wind as he spun and sent a trio of wind blades into the sky, trying to cut through the clouds. They cut through, but the clouds were so thick they closed up at the bottom before the slashes could break through to the clear sky. And still no attack from the Hokage itself. Maybe it really was after the daimyo. No, something about this was wrong to Naruto, he just couldn't think of what while people were fighting and dying in the dark. Damn it, I'm an idiot. Naruto realized as he flared his chakra more and brought the ends of one of his tails closer to the palace. The area lit up like the sun rose just for them. The soldiers, though somewhat fearful of the undead Kree,